go to Google and ask Google. I'm always there.
Testing, testing. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, cool. Lauren, good to see you. Joshua, good to see you. Jaswinder, good to see you.
It's nice to be here.
So, are you still staying at home and being productive? What's the situation there?
Yeah, I'm trapped in my house.
Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's not, right?
It's been a month.
Uh, so, who goes out and gets groceries?
I do, and my husband.
So, that's still safe?
Yeah, it's safe. We just can't take the train anywhere.
I don't know enough about that situation. Hey, Josh,
Salud.
how's the snow up where you are? Hey, there's a lot of noise I hear from someone. Is that me?
Heiner, I believe.
Oh, Heiner, I don't see you.
Well, I'm here.
Heiner, glad to know you're here.
Yes. I'm often hiding, but I'm here.
Ah, hey, good. I see you now. All right, cool. Right on time. Anybody want to check in? I got a few things to offer, but how are you guys this morning?
Sometimes a picture would have a look at this. On the Rhine River in southwest Queensland on fire. The fracking is a kilometre away. Methane.
I unfortunately understood maybe 1 or 2%. Did that come through clear for everybody else? Yeah, I got a lot of static.
Please mute your phone, Heiner. You've got static on your iPhone. You might need to switch to your computer. It's about to break my brain. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I see Heiner logged in only one time. Okay. Anyway. All right. Anybody want to go check in? We'll do an optional round of check-ins briefly, hopefully. All right. I'll go first. I was up till 3:30 a.m. my time with my daughter. It was a bonding time. We're actually playing with puppies and talking about stuff and watching a stupid binge watching series, but it was a good time with my daughter. I got about 4 hours, perhaps 3.5 hours of sleep last night. So I'm going to be a little bit batty, but I have two subjects that I potentially would lay on the table here for discussion, but I'll introduce those a little bit later. Over for now. Oh, Happy New Year. I hope it becomes a good, happy new decade. Jeez. Okay, over.
New decade and new possibilities.
What about the New Year's resolution? Are we allowed to share the New Year's resolutions? We don't have to keep them secret, do we?
I don't think we have any rule about that.
My New Year's resolution, which will be hard to live up to, but I'll try, and it's to show up on time to the global collaboration meeting. I mean, the barn raising especially. As to global collaboration, and the best thing I can do, I suppose, is at least the minimum is to show up on time. Over.
Thank you, Alex. I do believe that's one of the itemized items, list items in the behavior spreadsheet. Just thought that was curious to mention.
I haven't made any new resolutions as I'm aware of, but I believe there are certain changes ongoing, which happens every year for me now and has for at least a decade and a half, if not more, probably 2.5 decades. The one that I keep updating is that I don't want to suffer fools at all now. And then I look at the world, and I went out this morning to meet a young man who was a friend of old. He's a Sikh preacher. I took him under my wing long time ago. Anyway, he's settled, he's doing very well. Children are growing up. The older one has passed the driving test, and I think she's doing her, getting ready for university. He's a very nice man. And I keep asking myself, should I continue this relationship or should I move right to back off and then just check once in a while, say every year or 2 years? And should I stop entertaining Alex altogether? Well, I think he wants to stop entertaining me altogether. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But that's the impression I get. And should I look for more people as beautiful as Lauren and just sit there ogling and say, hey, this is a good meeting, I want to come again. So there's lots of little ditties like that, and I haven't made any notes this year. This is the first year for a long time I haven't actually written a diary. And I want to go out and buy a diary and make notes again. Little reminders. Day before yesterday, for about 3 months now, I have been reducing my diet. I'm checking out the relationship between the amount of food intake, attention span, and sleep pattern. Because the sleep patterns we've been given is a sleep pattern that has been forced on us due to industrialization. And that's not the natural sleep pattern. No mammal uses that sleep pattern, so why are we doing it? And there's a tremendous link between the amount of food eaten, when it's eaten, when we defecate or when I defecate, the amount of sleep that I can use, what my attention span is. It needs a lot of work. I went to bed that night. I had a very light food day, went to bed at normal bedtime, about 11:30. By 12:30, 1 o'clock, I was wide awake. For an hour, I lay in bed, came downstairs. I spent the rest of that night just surfing on Facebook and reading stuff, had a bath. So that would be yesterday. My physiological and my mental attitude was completely different. Mentally, I was much more relaxed, but the body wasn't tired, but I produced copious amounts of urine. Anything I took in, because I didn't eat most of yesterday till about this time, it went straight through me. Kidneys were working overtime. So I went to bed normally. I woke up late deliberately, and I'm much more what would be termed normal, but that really needs repeating and looking into and making notes. I want to do that. That was enjoyable, completely different. So that's my check-in and my topic for today, if anybody's interested. Even if you're not interested, still my topic for today. I'm complete, thank you.
Thanks, Jazz. Who's up?
I'll go. I've been comfortable for the last year. I've been cooking in the microwave. starts to pop and splatter like tin foil. Have you ever put metal in the microwave? It sparks. Well, this is fish exploding. And I thought, hell, what causes the fish to explode in the microwave? Maybe it's got heavy metals, mercury. And chicken, sometimes it does it with chicken as well. So that's a puzzle I want to work out. I'll have to go and search with Google. But the fish also, when I eat a lot of that fish, my feet swell up, which is associated with what Joe's Wender was talking about with the kidneys. Kidneys regulate your blood, help regulate your blood and toxins. So if I'm not handling toxins well, or there's too many toxins in the fish, I've got a problem with my diet. I've got to change my diet and go vegan completely. And coping with the fires here in Australia is an awesome task, a worrisome task. As they get closer, got to think about evacuating. So it's a serious problem. Luckily, we're close to the sea where I am. I'm only 2 blocks from the seaside, so I can go in the water. Anyway, over.
Cool. I'm amazed at the range of topics today. Next. This is optional, by the way. We can make it brief.
I can check in briefly. Yeah, I also have a few New Year's resolutions. I usually have that they tend to be among the same things. Lifestyle related issues. I looked through some notes in the last few hours, and I have like 3,000 notes or something in Evernote, and so it's so much. It's like scattered all over the place. So then it really came to me. I really need to learn to be more succinct and yeah, have a certain structure, I guess, to my activities, not sort of spread all over the place, but more focused. But that's also a typical New Year's resolution. So I have a little resolution today for our meeting to try to be to the point, and I'm interested also to see if we're gonna have the format of monologues or if we're gonna have some questioning. I always hope there's gonna be some questioning, but it's challenging because then we really have to be to the point and concise. So yeah, and new decade. Yeah, that's so I actually made a 10-year plan, or I began looking at a 10-year plan. So that was also interesting. What would I like to do in 10 years? So yeah, it's a new beginning for sure. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Anybody else want to go? That's a topic near and dear to my heart, obviously. Glenn? Heiner, you're going.
No. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Heiner, I
Okay.
wanted to apologize because when the static was coming from your iPhone, I did mute you. So I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't just constant when you were not speaking.
Okay, I go onto another system.
It's okay when you're on by yourself. When you're on with Sam together, then you get the static.
Alex, are you saying that if I mute, then Heiner does not have the static on his line?
That's right. When you were talking before, and Heiner came on, when you muted yourself, and Heiner came on, there was no static, and then you came on to talk to Heiner, and there was static.
Okay, if it begins.
Same here on my side. I hear the static when I hear Sam talk. It is that I'm using now my Apple, and then it's somehow that something is going on in the background. I go to my laptop, and then we see how it works.
Yeah, if you guys like, I can also disconnect and reconnect if that's a problem. Anyway, next.
I'll check in real quick. I've been my New Year's resolution is to upgrade my computer systems, so I've been researching Microsoft, Google Chrome, Apple Mac Minis, Apple Pros, laptops, and I can't find anything that's worth the money. The only thing that I found that I want is the $50,000 Apple, and that's just too expensive. So it's something's going on in technology right now where the prices aren't really matching. There's just too many options. Like before, you just upgrade your CPU, but now there's just too many factors. It's hard to figure it out. So the best bang for the buck that I've found is the Apple Pro with the USB-C connector. And that allows you to connect it to a Raspberry Pi, which gives you all the things that you need of a real computer. But it's almost gotten so complicated with hardware. And I just did an upgrade with all my software, and it's just ridiculously complicated. So I'm ready to go back to a pen and a piece of paper. And that's my check-in is New Year's resolution is a piece of paper, a pen, and then take the pictures on the iPhone and let the open character recognition do its thing. And hopefully I write neatly. I'm complete. That's my barn raising.
That's a very good point, Josh. I had the same thing earlier this year. These all-in-one systems that used to be available, they're not as comprehensive as they used to be. And there's a lot of add-ins and things. It's mighty confusing for anybody to put a system together now. I don't know what's going on either. But thanks for the information. That's well appreciated.
I also can relate to this, yeah.
Yeah, it's the memory that's so expensive. The memory, and then you can get the cheap memory from China and do it yourself, but you just hope the DIMM slots work. And I just don't have the time anymore to keep playing with it the way, I mean, it was like that always back in the days when we built our own PCs, but now it's gotten out of control. It's just too many freaking options. The iPad Air, the iPad Pro, the 11-inch, the 12-inch, this keyboard, that keyboard, USB connector, lightning port. It's literally out of control. Like if I had the whereabouts, I would just use the iPhone 11, which I think is the perfect device. It's just the screen is too small.
I was going to buy.
Hey, before we really go deep into any specific topic like buying PCs, which would be forever, does anybody have had a chance? Lauren, have you had an option to check in?
No, I just so I'm here because I'm actually at home for once, so I get to come, which is exciting. Because I moved to Paris, so now we're always out at 5 o'clock on a Saturday. But in about a week or so, Charles Blass and I are hosting a collective intelligence collaboratory. And I actually wanted to pick your brain about, basically you've discussed so many things that I think could be super useful in designing the collaboratory, which is basically the concept is we're discussing one topic, kind of like, you know how the GCC started about trying to start a new kind of alternative to the UN, like talking about one topic. That's not the topic, but talking about kind of a topic like that, but from 50 or 100 different facets. And the point of the collaboratory is to take these different discussions that are going on across different organizations and try to weave them together into a knowledge repository on the subject. So I'm here today to try to tap into your brains and see what you might have for me in terms of like what you would need on a practical level to make this happen. Like for example, Sam, you know all about knowledge repositories. Heiner, you have the Magic Roundtable thing, which I think would be super helpful. And so I just wanted to see what you might have for me. Like when people come into the conversation, like it's a combination of kind of like online conversations and in person, what tools and materials do they have to have so that they feel like there's some kind of organization, but not too much so that's holding them back?
Well, really, I mean, I don't have much. I'm a bit of a generalist. I'm not a specialist. Do you need much to join the collaboration? You can learn to collaborate without actually ever having collaborated.
Yes, you
If you
can.
have anything or nothing, just turn up is the basic thing.
Yeah,
Go with the flow.
that's the point.
If you have something specific, that, yeah, you can have that, but that soon becomes boring because other people have their own agendas and they're waiting to bring that up. So you really, you've got to be able to allow everybody to have their say, no matter how, I'll use the word inane it might seem, it's important to them.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do.
This is a collaboration that's a conversation. It's a tree. It's a collaboration tree with branches going off. So you could call the GCC the trunk, and the other groups the branches. But you know, there are other groups that have branches bigger than the trunk. So that's really severe background noise.
It sounds almost like you're asking then about the bridge from the conversation trunk, so to say, and to the knowledge repository. Or it's obviously a question we touched upon many times.
I've got to turn my volume down because of that background noise.
Anyway, that's an interesting theme, the relation between the conversation and the knowledge repository. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
So 2 points. Number one, I came with 2 topics that I wanted to potentially lay on the table. And one of them was, how do we establish this sense of collaboration, this sense of group memory, shared memory, separate from real-time conversations? And that necessarily brings up the topic of tools. And I had 2 or 3 that I wanted to bring up as potentials to consider. Not that they're the best, but one of them, which I'm about to paste into this session, is one of the very simplest. And so I'll talk about that later. It's something called meeting words. And I'm going to paste the link in right now. And if you go there, I think you'll see what I've been trying to do in this particular meeting. The thing about meeting words is anybody can edit and anybody can inject or insert characters at any location in the document at any time. Okay, so we can all be typing. It's kind of like Google Docs if it's shared, but we can actually do it anonymously, so you don't have to log into it. So if you click on that link, you can actually see it. So that's topic number 1. There's 2 other tools that I wanted to propose, but meeting words is the first. The second is this topic that I mentioned from last week, which I don't think we really got into very much, and that is this anger topic. It's particularly appropriate to me because last week I was very, very angry. I'm a very angry person last week. And I am curious about the role of anger and how appropriate or inappropriate it is and how it shows up and what motivates me to this kind of anger. And I had some very interesting one-on-one conversations following last Saturday's barn raising, which are not yet shared, so I didn't want to go into detail about them a lot. So anyway, those were the two topics I came prepared to talk about. But on this third one, the one that I absolutely latch onto when you talk about knowledge repositories and collaboration, I wanted to at least offer and put on the table again my little blog item called the 9 Artifacts of Collaboration. And I still think, and I've thought for years, that that really helps pull teams and communities and collaborations together, regardless of what people say about tools and not tools and being and not being and whatever. None of that has to exclude any consideration for these 9 tools, 9 artifacts. I'm going to put a link in here as soon as I can find it again. But anyway, I would lay that on the table as well. So that's my offering for now. Over.
Was your idea, Sam, that we write into the meeting document while we're having this meeting, for example, or?
Yes, and you can also do it separate from these conversations. So if you notice, if you click on that link there, you'll see that what I've typed so far, I believe, is in green because that's the color I've assigned myself. If you click there and if you type your name at the upper right and you assign yourself a color or just to take the color that it's assigning you, then you can click anywhere in the document and type and see what happens. So unlike this chat transcript in Zoom, you can actually add information at any location in the document. And so that, to me, seems useful. And by the way, these meeting words documents, they persist. So they stay there forever as long as you have that link. And at least for now, it's free. So I just thought I'd introduce that here. I've been using it for years, but just looking for an opportunity to introduce it here. Over.
Yeah, by the way, I definitely also have some ideas relating to all this. So maybe we'll have, could be interesting to get into. But also, I see Collins arrived. She mentioned I've been playing around with Coggle that Colin showed me, and that's also a very interesting tool, mind mapping tool. And yeah, I've had great fun with that. So obviously we can use many different tools. That one, okay, I'll share one idea. I think it relates to Lauren's question. Is one of the emergent ideas which have come up several times in these conversations is the idea of profiles of specific individuals, so that in the knowledge repository, it certainly seems that one of the primary concepts, possibly the root concept of the whole system, will be the names of specific individuals. And then perhaps then there's another layer, which are these ideas or concepts, which might be then like links between the profiles, so that, for example, certain number of people are very interested in a certain idea that they share an interest in, and then by going into the profiles, you might then find out what it is their interest is in that idea, or how they understand the idea. Because of course, one of the typical challenges is that we mean different things with the same words. So that could also then be a tool for a knowledge repository, and obviously all kinds of documents like what Sam just shared. I mean, one could use many such systems, like also Trello and Workflowy and several others have been mentioned. But I do feel that the profiles of specific people are somehow foundational in group memory in general. So yeah, I think that's definitely an idea I wanted to
Hey,
put
Glenn,
into this. Yeah.
but how do you make profiles that don't suck?
Well, I think the profiles that I would be most interested in would be value-based profiles. So profiles that have to do with what people really love, what they're interested in, what they believe in, and which they themselves like. So that the profile isn't really ready until the person themselves feel, whoa, this is really something that sums up my core interests at the moment. And possibly also, if you have some other people who read it, yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting, and I think I can understand. You know, that's you. Let's say someone else says that's you, right? I recognize that. So, and that's obviously the big challenge. How do you make profiles that are good? But I definitely think that it has to be related one way or another to values. So it has to be related to what that person is most interested in, or most values. And that sort of build out from that. At least that's the idea that I've had regarding this. Yeah, I'm finished. Yeah.
The profile we got on Facebook's like that. When you add items to your Facebook profile, work history and interests, hobbies, and movies and books you've read. So you've got a really good understanding of somebody there. You can copy and paste that if you need to, I guess, or you should be able to get a JSON file. If you can get a JSON file of your Facebook data, that would work well. Over.
Yeah, also one thing I'll just mention briefly is another idea, of course, is could we possibly use conversations like these to create profiles? And that's obviously a very interesting idea, which was one of the primary ideas behind the deep dives. But we had deep dives, but we didn't actually create profiles, so we didn't really do it all the way.
That's an interesting idea.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, I was just watching a really interesting sociological, psychological profile creation experiment on Netflix. And it's a show called The Circle. So they stick a bunch of people into a building together. They have to create their profiles and decide if they're going to be themselves or if they're going to catfish and be somebody else. And they can only talk to each other on text. They can never see each other, and they don't get to meet each other. And they don't get to use their voice. And then they get to see who can manipulate each other into being the last person standing. So it's a game show. But it was quite psychologically fascinating watching people that decided to be themselves and actually be real and honest versus people that are playing the manipulation game. And it starts off with a rating of the profiles. So I think it's really important to watch the evolution of psychology with digital information and be very much aware of who owns the information on the profile and who has the rights to change the profile. And I found it interesting when Facebook started in 2005, it wasn't a question of what you're going to put on there. It was a question of taking your profile from your college, which was an established institution, an organization, and putting your Facebook profile from your college onto a digital information. So starting off with what is the profile used for, meaning if I took my identification from my driver's license, it would be different information than, let's say, my passport. So starting off knowing what it is that you're doing for profiling is very important. And a lot of people, you know, if it's not validated, I can put anything I want on a profile. I'm 47 feet tall and I have green eyes and I look like an octopus and this is my profile. In other words, it's almost like we've gone insane. I just think everybody is not looking at data properly of what data actually is. And the word data gets used so much, we forget that it actually has to do with fields, and fields have validation rules and attributes. So without the attributes and validation rules of the fields themselves, the data will tend to skew into any direction and become unmanageable. And I recommend to people to take a database creation class and learn about normalizing data and how to put it into tables, relevancy, identifications, and keys. In order to, before you even start a project like this, you have to understand what databases actually are, because so many people use the word blockchain and don't even know what a blockchain is. It's a distribution of a flat ledger. So in other words, we're using all these words and we don't even know what they mean. It's like talking about philosophy and saying it's subjective or objective, and you don't even know what being objective actually is. And I find that to be a little bit insane. So that's my rant on, I don't know if that helps you out, Lauren, or the rest of the group, but I think we need to just really kind of learn what we're doing before we do it, because so many people are doing shit and not knowing what they're doing and just creating a mess in this world, and it's driving me crazy. I'm done with it.
That's what
I'm
a lot
complete.
of people are thinking like that these days. And it's a shame, I think, because at some of these face-to-face meetings where people talk from the heart, they get to know each other, and whether or not they're full of shit or genuine people who have a heart. But online, you don't get that online. You could be talking to anyone, especially if it's only text and you haven't got the video, picture, or the sound. So that's what puts value into these kind of interactions on the internet. But if you're a member of a group in your local community and you've got real faces to shake hands with, it makes all the difference, I think. Something special happens between people when there's face-to-face interaction, and when you break bread together. So that kind of thing is one of the priorities I think we should all be encouraging and putting in how it works too. It's part of the community socialization process that brings human beings together better, helps us understand our ins and outs and ups and downs and eccentricities and eccentricities and all that sort of shit. But it's also useful for peer-to-peer barn raising. Over.
Seems that one of the questions then is how one could combine those two worlds as best as possible. The meetings where we see each other and can speak far richer information in some ways, and how can that have a beneficial relationship with the database, which is growing gradually and hopefully is growing not in the mad sense that Josh is wanting it towards, but growing in a beautiful way, beneficial way. And I don't think we've quite figured that out yet.
Well, if I were to try and inject a thought, I don't think the answer is that you can create a profile that doesn't suck without knowing the people better. Because for everything you do, if you understand what it's going to be used for, then you can actually tailor what you create for that purpose. If you don't, and if people are just random strangers, something that's good for me may suck for somebody else. And without knowing that, 99% of the time, it's probably going to suck to somebody. Okay. So I don't know that you can actually establish that. And that's just probably too much common sense, but I think it just bears stating, at least for myself. So the other thing that I'd like to propose when you think about that is this notion that Josh introduced, which is that if you structure data, if you have quote unquote these validation rules, these normalization rules, you can talk about third normal form, you can talk about, those are all ways to structure very clean and, by the way, very expensive databases. The cheapest way to do it is to have no rules, obviously, and that's AKA unstructured data, right? And so that's why big data these days is all about mining unstructured data. How do you get into random content like video, text, web pages, audio, etc., and extract things that are worthwhile? And we've been talking about that for 2 years. But if we were to actually say, let's be very clear that when we have a profile, it's going to consist of these 17 fields or whatever we decide to come up with. And one of these fields is education. And therefore, your education, to be valid, must have a graduation certificate attached to it so that we know that you actually graduated from that place. And the second is, if you actually have a focus on a topic, let's make sure you have a published article on the web or in PDF for an academic journal or whatever, okay? And that's how we do it. So you can actually go all the range from unstructured to, hey, I can talk about collaborology all I want. Or somebody could say, collaborology, you're full of shit because, I don't see any degrees in collaborology, next to your name. And then that would be the other end, where we have high validation rules on content. And, by the way, if you want to change the number of fields there, then you have to go through this big review process. And is it going to be orthogonal to any of the existing fields, or is it going to be subjective to one? Is it going to be relational? Is it going to be hierarchical? Is it going to be blah, blah, blah? All of those rules. So when we're actually creating new collaboration and people say, hey, I want to use this rule and that rule and this tool and that tool, normally there's not a chance to really come to agreement on that. That's why I pose the 9 artifacts as at least a way to ask the questions. Where do we want to put our stuff? How do we want to do this? Do we want to encourage blogging? Do we want to encourage cross-linking? Do we want to encourage a common terminology / glossary / Dictopedia? All these questions are raised. Where do we want to have the conversation? Where do we want to put our shared artifacts like links? Even 17 links that I've got right now that I could actually offer to Lauren, where should we put it if we really want to support this collaboratory? Is there such a location? So the 9 artifacts are intended to raise these questions / discussions, or they can be places where the organizers say, this is what we're going to use. We'll start here. We'll do this here. If you don't like it, we'll improve it later, but just start here. That's actually a decision I think is fine to make when you're creating a new team / community. I've not done it here. I've been gently trying to do it here. It's taken 2 years and we haven't gotten too far. But in your opportunity laboratory, Lauren, you and Charles could say, these are the 9 places we're going to put things, or the one place we're going to do all these 9 things, and this is how we're going to do it. And I think that's perfectly valid. And I would urge you to actually take a very clear, structured stand from the start, because you then allow people to focus on what it is you really want to gather people for, rather than spending 50 or 80% of the time talking about how you want to do that, and then no more time left for the actual focus. I know Heiner has lots of thoughts on this, but end of rant for me for now.
I would like to rant on with what Joshua was saying. I think we are not aware on the grid. You call it matrix, I call it scaffolding. And what we put in there, we are always only talking about data, but not about information, knowledge, wisdom, and how to relate that. That's why I created this cognitive panorama
to add additionally the context and to overlay the context. And it doesn't matter if it's a sound, if it's a smell, is it a symbol or an icon. This is important. Otherwise, we are getting lost in words and in Babel. So anyway, I like this term collapse. It's 25 years. National Academy of Sciences first used it, as far as I know. And I think we should really come clear what is in our repository. Are all the senses, all the feelings, all the colors involved, or do we just have data we can normalize?
Go ahead, Alex.
There's something about creativity or collaborology it's linked, and the fact is that a lot of creativity is a very solitary process. Individuals go into confinement and create works of art. You know what I mean? Leonardo da Vinci and what have you. So if we can learn somehow to bring our talents into the collaboration and find a way to work with the team as a group in unison, you know what I mean? And so we come up with a creation that's multifaceted and a part of each of our creative genius, a part of our creativity that's built into each one of us in our hearts, our minds, the neurons, the connections. If we can plug each other into the neural network, bingo, we've got Lawnmower Man sort of thing. I'm starting to wander off track. I better leave it there. Come back to you, Josh.
No, I think you're on the right track, but just stopping and thinking about what we're actually doing in this world. Like, why are we on this call? What are we doing? I feel like we've built this giant mess of data, meaning social media said that anyone and everyone can publish and anyone can see anyone's publication. And then social media networks went from 3 or 4, or, when I started off, there was a group called Nerd World, and that was in 1993. And it was collecting all the data that existed in the public forums from the governments around the world and organizing that data into data sets, which at the time was anything from HTML, which was just starting, to XML, to news groups, and yada, yada, yada. So instead of going off into some big tangent, because this is a huge thing, the world has yet to create what needs to be created, which is what we're all trying to create here. And I believe that's what you're trying to do, Lauren, with Charles. And I think everyone's trying to do this, is called a World Data Organization, the WDO. And this is a proposal from a presidential candidate here in the United States named Andrew Yang, who's proposing that the European governments, Americas, everyone in the world, from Malaysia all the way to Singapore to Japan to China, we need to decide how are we going to share information. And if we don't do that, then we'll have cyber wars and information wars. And the big thing that they're trying to scare us with here in America is because of the politics in Iran right now, with the United States killing one of the major generals in Iran just this past week. Are they going to retaliate physically, or are they going to retaliate with cyber warfare? And are they going to start shutting down the grids here in America? And do they have the knowledge to do that? And they've proven it by taking our drones and landing them some years ago. So they do have the ability to do cyber warfare. And I think it's really important that we stop for a second and really look at the word sovereignty. What is sovereign? What information is sovereign? If we don't do this and we just keep creating more collaborations and more data repositories, to what ends? I mean, what are we doing here? I'm sorry, I'm just, it's the New Year's and I've been looking at all of my data and how am I going to organize that for all my clients, and how are we going to use help desk tickets? How am I going to connect tickets together with multiple people? But from a global perspective, how are we going to keep nations communicating to each other in the future. I think that's something we really need to stop and look at, because there's a lot going on in cyber warfare and financial warfare. A lot of people don't even understand how money is created and moved around this planet. And the people that know how to do that are controlling mass populations. If you look at what's going on around the world, consistently one nation after another is stepping up and saying, we don't want to be subdued and we don't want to have our voices not heard. We want to be a participant in this nation, and the fascist dictators of these nations are suppressing it. And how they're suppressing it obviously is with the data movement of information. They're cutting off access in India to the internet so that they can't stand up for Muslim people. I mean, sorry, I go off on a rant, but I mean, it's really, we're almost a society of crazy people, because we just create more data. No one can take it in, and no one can even have a conversation. I mean, I came here to listen to Sam's fundraising, and here we are talking about collaboratory with Charles Glass, which I'd love to have that conversation at another time. I'd love to be invited, Lauren, to you and Charles's. I just read your white paper super quick, but what are we doing here? Like, Sam, help us out. It's your group, please. I'm complete. Thank you.
That's the first misnomer, I think, is that it's my group, right? I think that what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to do, and many of us here as an experiment, is to see if we can come up with how we do all this at a meta level. And my answer after 2 years is we probably can't. So that's why my stance is about to change, which is somebody needs to push or pull in a certain direction. Heiner, I know there's a lot to talk about with you. Jeswinder, I know there's a lot to talk about you. Josh, I know you've got a lot of experience in other organizations doing this. But somebody usually steps up and says, this is the way we're going to do it. My experiment here was to see if we could actually evolve that together and co-create that. My solution, my answer is maybe, but it's really slow. And then you get a lot of people asking, what the bleep are we doing here, and why are we showing no progress? So as an experiment, perhaps this is the hypothesis currently trying to be validated. I'm still trying to figure out whether we can actually prove differently. But so far, we're not. So far, Ted, I think, is right. And Doug, I think, is wrong. And that is that creativity happens in individual brains. It doesn't yet happen in collectives. And this is a sad hypothesis for me to lean towards. But until we prove differently, we're only giving the current paradigm more and more evidence. So I still have optimism. I still have hope. But this insistence on doing this experiment about how we can co-create these meta rules for conversation, for collaboration, for co-creation is not really proceeding real well. And I haven't yet put my thumb or any other digit on it. I have suspicions because, again, this is probably one of the classic smart people problems. I don't think anybody here is not smart. The problem is we all want to do things a little bit differently. And that is what I'm pushing on, is whether we can actually coalesce as a group of smart people and try and create this meta structure. And right now, it ain't happening. I'll admit it.
Wasn't the whole point of doing the deep dives to address this specific problem?
It was. But even without that focus, we've not been able to do it. We've tried to focus, but these conversations...
Well, we actually haven't. Sam. I mean, we haven't done that. We talked about doing it, but we haven't.
We did it for quite a while. We did it for several months.
Well, where's the document? Sam's deep dive document. Where's Tammy's deep dive document? Where's Glenn's deep dive document? The document wasn't created. We didn't actually do it. We did a sort of a beginning trial of sorts, but we didn't carry through on the idea. And the idea was pretty straightforward. It was to have a profile that was built from a conversation where we find out what that person wants to do. And this was the question Joshua raised. What is it we want to do here? And if we don't answer that question for each person, what they want to do, we're stuck. And this was exactly the reason why we wanted to do the deep dives to address the problem you're mentioning now, Sam. Just going around the circles until we know what the specific people in the team actually want. We need to find that out.
Alex, you had your finger up, but then I'll go after Alex.
We do come up with answers. These questions have been raised quite a few times, and the answers do come up. But the thing is, where do we put them?
Exactly. We forget.
If we had that page on the website that says this is what we're trying to do, and this link sends you to the suggestions that have come up so far. Over.
I think I was about to answer and expound the way Alex did, which is we do answer these questions. The problem is we don't have a group memory. So I understand what I keep in my brain about what interests Heiner. I keep in my brain what interests you, Glenn. I keep in my brain what interests Josh and Lauren and Jaswinder and Alex and everybody else. And everybody else does the same. So over time, that memory degrades or shifts or gets interpreted or it gets, malleable based on your own interests. So you think, oh, Glenn's interested in that, but it's really this because I'm interested in this, so I lose sense of what Glenn was really interested in. That's what happens when we don't have group shared memory. Those documents, by the way, Glenn, do exist. I've spent hundreds of hours creating these documents that accompany these videos on YouTube. And I've encouraged no less than probably dozens or hundreds of times people to go in there and add and correct and derive and extract and interpret and, correct and edit and revise. No one, to my knowledge, has done that to any serious degree. So that is why I say these attempts at collaboration are failing. Josh has said, let's go to base camp. And some of us try it. It hasn't really sustained. Some of us have said, let's go use Lumio. We've tried it. It hasn't sustained. Same thing with Trello, same thing with Workflowy, same thing with everything else. Look, this point that I want to bring, and I'll just go for another 20 seconds, Josh, I see your hand, is that to collaborate, we need to learn the skills and tools of collaboration. And if we're not willing to learn those skills and tools, we ain't going to do it. Just like when Doug says, and by this I mean Doug Engelbart, right? If we are given new capabilities via new tools, and we don't choose to learn how to do it, like if we don't choose to learn how to drive, you're not going to be able to go far without a car. So if you have this unwillingness to learn new tools and new skills, then you're going to stay as capable as you are today, and you're not going to gain all of that capability, which is being offered us by Meeting Words, by Zoom, by Google, by Workflowy, by all of these tools that I just itemized. Now, tools are not the main point. The willingness to collaborate is the main point. And that willingness to collaborate, how are you going to do it if you just do things the old way and just talk and then these words just float off into thin air? I really don't understand that. I really don't. You certainly can't collaborate across generations or across distance without doing so. And I'm going to be, I got to just pull myself back because this is another major rant for me, okay? Is that these questions have been asked so many times in this conversation, and I'm tired of hearing them. And yet every time they've been written down or shared, there's very little follow-up.
The follow-up has to happen
that's
in
my
these
question.
conversations, Sam, they have to happen on Saturdays. We have to include the follow-ups in the meeting. Otherwise, it's not going to happen anything. So you can say today we're going to go through this. Or we can each come with suggestions. I wrote a long list of possible subjects that we could go through, which was shared on Trello, and we haven't had a single meeting where we've gone through any of those topics. So I think you know, we could do it, but we'll have to include it in the video conversation. Otherwise, it's just going to be floating down in some database. Yeah, that was what I want to say.
I'm still not sure what bootstrapping is. I've got to look that up one day.
Help you with that, Alex. I think we all want to talk at once. But go ahead, Heiner. I think, you know, when you really look at the reality of what's going on, every organization has someone that holds the rest of the organization accountable to each other for the shared memory, for the tasks that are at hand, for the things that you have to do. And the old structure was to have hierarchy where a person is in charge of a group of people. But the new change of that, if we want to do things differently, is to share the responsibility in a time frame. And we have yet here at GCC to pick a time frame. The time frame that was initially set at GCC was in order to get $1 million to win a prize. Once that time frame lapsed and it didn't happen, there was never a new objective. And so it's a year and a half or almost 2 years later, and that objective has not happened. I see your time frame, Sam, but my point is this, and I've made it about 1,000 million times, and I'll make it for the last time. I hope it's the last time for me. I hope I don't have to make this point again. If there's not a time frame holding a group of people accountable to do something, and if there's not a person that actually holds those particular people accountable, nothing happens. And if we don't share that, if someone's not able to hold the group accountable, we don't pass the baton to someone else that holds the group accountable, then it's chaos. And that's where we're at, is chaos. If you're not the leader of this group right now, Sam, if I can just talk forever and just cut you off and not let you talk, and you try to talk and I cut everybody else off, it's chaos. But if I stop and say, go ahead, Sam, I see your time out, I recognize you, you have the floor, get what you need to get accomplished with the group, collaboratology, collaborate, collab, but holding no one responsible for a deadline, an actual point in time where you stop and say, was it done or not done? Then it will just go on forever. That's my whole point, is someone has to stop and say, Joss Winder, did you get your needs taken care of? Lauren, you have your hand up. Do you get your needs taken care of? Heiner, did you get your needs taken? If someone doesn't go around the room and say, is everybody got their needs taken care of? Then you don't have collaborology. And with that, I'm complete.
Lauren?
Heiner, did you want to say something? You're muted.
Heiner, you're not coming through on audio. Still not.
Okay, I'll say something in the meantime. So yeah, this, what I call the Lumio problem, you know, when you want a group to collaborate and you're like, okay, so let's make decisions, we'll all go to Lumio. No one goes to Lumio. And then you don't make any decisions. That happens every time, right? So this isn't like a new thing. So I've thought of a way to solve this problem. It may or may not work, but I'd like your feedback on it. And that is this. So we're not actually going to dictate any kind of software or any kind of methodology for doing this. What we will try to do is try to incentivize what we're calling federation, so that if a group gets ideas in their head and somehow they find some alignment, they go through a process. So Ray Powell has actually come up with this CoGov process, in which you decide ahead of time who's coming into this agreement with what assets, how you're going to co-govern your group, and who's going to make what decisions. So basically ownership and decision making, you decide that ahead of time. And then you basically can set up a little governance structure. And so we're setting it up. And so groups can, who find alignment can federate. And then two groups who find alignment can also federate. And so we're imagining the funding structure to be that assets are where we're calling unlocked when a certain level of collaboration has been reached. And you decide that ahead of time by saying, okay, what is the proof of collaboration? That might be a certain kind of knowledge repository, like something has to be done. And then once that is done, that pool of money or assets is unlocked. So basically you put these incentives in place, but you don't tell people how to get them done, or you might give them suggestions like Sam is doing. He's suggesting there are these tools that are options. And I just wanted your feedback. Could this work? Could the, what might be some problems with this? Yeah, Alex.
I can see how it would work with people showing up to the face-to-face group meetings, because that's collaborology. And the proof that you were there is obvious because you showed up at the meeting. The database can register that event. The database can register nearly any event online. Like even Facebook even measures people's mouse tracking, can track your cursor around the screen and send the information back to Facebook. They do that with scripts, simple script and Python programming languages. So valuing people's attendance is the first step. And then more people will make the commitment to show up because they know that's going to be credited to the value of their presence. Over.
Sam?
Thanks, Alex. Okay, I'm going to state my conclusion one more time, just because I want to be so clear about it, that it will then be very bipolar or polarizing, whichever the right word is, about this. Groups that I have seen work have at least two tiers of membership. There's quote unquote the organizers, and then there's quote unquote the other members. And this barn raising / GCC for me was an attempt to see if that was necessary. I've seen it work with those two designations, but I've not yet seen it work where everybody was equal. And that was kind of the going in premise here for GCC. And I'm now saying, yeah, it may work, but it's going to take too bleeping long. So I'm going to say it's not an absolute, but where I'm going to shift is to acknowledge that at least two tiers are necessary. And by the way, this also means two different knowledge repositories. There's a knowledge repository I have found that's useful for the organizers, which is relatively quote unquote private, that is not shared with the other members. And that raises issues of transparency and trust. I completely see that. That was another reason I wanted to try this experiment, whether we could have just one single class of membership and keep everything so transparent and not have a single person drive the decisions. It hasn't been working, and everybody sees that, it's just too frustrating. On the other hand, if a small number of us, whether it's just me or whether it's me designating a number of people, or whether we have an election that says, okay, let's pick 3 or 5 or 7 people, that's going to be another whole different set of conversations / debates / arguments. So to me, I'm just coming to the conclusion that things move faster when you have at least 2 tiers of membership. That doesn't mean they're better. That doesn't mean that they're more effective. They just move faster. It's a real difference. Whether effective or fast is the good thing. I've been trying to tolerate slowness to try and just really see whether or not we could just live with a single class of membership. I'm now saying, I've tried long enough. I don't have the skills to make it happen. I do know how to make it happen in the old model with 2 tiers. So that's a sad state of affairs for me today, actually. Over. Lauren?
So I wanted your feedback on this kind of like the structure, responding to what you're saying. We thought of one way to handle this, which is that people get to, you basically ahead of time, you decide what roles you think you need to actually get something done, and then have a list of roles, like the power that someone has if they choose a role, the responsibilities that come with that role, and basically how much currency or reputation that person receives as part of doing that role. Do you see a problem with this structure?
Are you asking me personally?
Yeah, all of you.
I'll defer for others for later.
It seems to be pretty much similar to the old paradigm, what you're suggesting. In what way is it different to the old paradigm? Is there a
well,
unique
the difference is in a hierarchy, someone tells you what to do, and so you don't choose. When you go into a workplace, you don't choose the role that you fulfill. Someone just says, oh, we're hiring you for this, so do this. So in this system, you get to choose what you want to do, but along with the power comes a balance of responsibility. So you can see how much reputation you want to take on. But one of the problems is why people don't want to go through the database is it's work, and if there's not really a reward for that. Yeah, Josh.
I have a question for you, Lauren. How do you know when it's done? The thing that you want to do is complete. How do you know it's completed?
I would say that the way we're structuring it with the DAO. And so what I would say is someone makes a proposal to the DAO. They said, I have taken on this role, I've done these responsibilities, and then they show you that they prove that they've actually done it. And when that happens, then they get the token or reputation commensurate with that responsibility.
So my question is, they prove it. What happens if someone says it's not done and the proof and the validation has already gone through, but yet we find out that they gamed the system and it really wasn't done? Go ahead, Sam.
This actually comes directly out of software engineering and Agile. And that is that when you actually want to define a feature or a task or a responsibility, right at the first outset, you define what completion means. This is one of my Dictopedia stories, okay? So in other words, completion means what are the test cases? What are the test criteria? And as stated in such a way that any objective third party can say yes or no. So in other words, if I say I know how to log in using this particular set of edit fields, that's a clear yes or no. If a criteria for one of your responsibilities, Lauren, is, oh, a document is circulated for review and meets with at least 67% of approval, then that's a success criterion. If another success criterion is it's done by a certain date, then that's a yes or no statement. You know, nothing's subjective. It's got to be that objective. And that's how you can say, okay, this is how we agree whether or not this thing is done or not. And if you agree on that, and then the person embarks on that task or responsibility, then it's no longer very ambiguous. And it's a case of skill for a team to actually be able to define completion criteria this clearly. Now, I do want to say one more thing about this. Software engineering in particular is a great experimental laboratory for collaboration. It is almost better than any other. Why? Because the product has to work. In many areas, like marketing, like literature, like poetry, like whatever else, the end product doesn't quote unquote have to work. It's a subjective evaluation. But in software, it's very objective. The software either works or it doesn't according to those test criteria or performance parameters or compatibility or integration or whatever. So software has evolved a number of collaboration skills and tools, and I think that they are extremely appropriate for other collaborations. The problem is it takes deep understanding and deep skills in order to be that collaborative. For example, I want to talk about how software actually collaborates using success criteria, using revision control, using code review, using all of these tools that software has come up with. And I would probably be very biased, but I think, I would urge anyone to test this. I think it's probably the most sophisticated example of where executable, really testable collaboration has evolved. Heiner, I'd really be curious about your opinion on this. Because if that is true, then I do want to really recognize that these skills must be acquired, must be understood, and therefore I will now lean towards collaborating with people who understand these responsibilities, understand these tools, and are willing to hold themselves accountable in the sense that Josh is talking about, to using these tools and to collaborate effectively. If people are not willing to do so, then we're going to get collaboration in the form of conversation for another 2 or 3 or 4 years. But I want to go a different direction. I want to go where collaboration is an understood skill set, a domain of understanding that needs to be learned or taught or acquired, and not just assumed. We've been assuming for 2 years that everybody who wants to collaborate knows how to collaborate. And this is kind of a pivotal moment for me because just as I just was very clear on my previous conclusion, this is what this conclusion implies.
Does this imply, Sam, that the project managers then are defining the purpose? So that you have to have a team. Okay, so who defines the purpose?
When you have an agile team, you have, okay, so this is pushing very hard on a metaphor / model, okay? And I don't want to directly translate it here because there's too many words here that you're going to misunderstand. But the main point I wanted to make is one single tier of membership with one single tier of shared memories and responsibilities and powers is not going to work that well. It's going to make things last a long time. And I think 2 tiers is an absolute minimum. That's the single hardest decision I've been trying to make now for 2 years, and I'm sadly leaning towards that direction. Now, the implications are many. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, isn't the second tier what Doug would call sprouts? So the first tier is the open conversation space.
No. No, that is orthogonal. That's an orthogonal direction. In my view, there's either the organizers / planners / the visionaries / the owners of the community. And then the second is the quote unquote membership.
So then you have to have somebody who has a specific project that they have defined the purpose of, right?
Well, call it mission, project, objective, goal, team, whatever, okay? Project is only one possible word.
Yeah, for
example, it doesn't have to be project.
Colin and me, we're collaborating on mapping the conversation space and doing work in the direction of Copilot. I mean, it's going slow, but wouldn't that be an example of, let's say, a sprout? Like it's a team that comes out of the, so the first tier is just to open a conversation space. Then you have specific people who say, I want to do this. This is the purpose. Who wants to support me in doing this? And then you can have this, organized approach. Does that make sense?
Glenn, you bring up a very important point, but it's distinct from the point that I was trying to make. In other words, if you identify this sprout, this offshoot project, it again potentially must ask, do I have 1 or 2 tiers of members here? Okay. It could be the case that everybody's clear on their responsibilities, in which case this looks like the old model. But if it's open, it's co-generative, and it's actually trying to lean into the new model, then I think these are valid questions.
There was an objective listed on the paper I posted at the Google documents, and I've just put a link in the chat. So if we've got 2 tiers, one of them's for the creative geniuses and the other one's for the rest of the people. People that are not creative.
No,
Is everyone
I
creative?
don't want to even let people believe that that's what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. The most creative people could be people from the membership. All I'm saying is that the owners/organizers are the ones who define the rules of engagement and are setting the initial vision or objective of that team. That's it. Now, I'm trying to say, even if I go that direction, I want a culture where those initial structural elements are open for constant review and improvement. That is crucial for me, because if we live according to a published set of rules and we live for the next 2 years according to that, and it only comes out of one or small number of brains and it doesn't evolve, that's old school. That's not new school. So I really want to make sure I'm very distinct. I'm not saying that there's only a small number of creative people. That is not the objective. I'm just saying this certain small set should propose an initial structure. Over. Yeah, Lauren.
So I wanted to know, out of all the ideas that have been proposed, not like what's worked, like what have people actually done, but all of you, what would be your fantasy for like everything working smoothly? Like what roles would there be? Like yeah, basically what all the roles you would need. Like you would need like a journalist who put together a newsletter. You need someone to go through the repository and do X, Y, and Z. What are all the things that you think need to be done so that this would be amazing? Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, I gave you those roles a year ago. We had this conversation for about 7 hours, and I wrote down all the roles for you and gave them to you. If you go back to your notes of all those roles, from communications manager to engineer, etc.
Okay,
But
that's not, yeah, that's not really, those are, I mean, that's more like for a company though, Josh. That's not really like for this,
no,
for processing these conversations. I don't think that's, it was more like company, like a startup that would be useful for.
Or a Montessori school or a poetry session. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's just a question of whether you get it done. And I think what I hear Sam saying is he's leaving the word out, which is called an engineer. And you can engineer software. You can engineer a wind turbine. You can engineer the building of a house. You can engineer building a motor. You can engineer building something. But if you don't know what you're building, you're just spinning your wheels. And if you're trying to pretend that you're engineering something that doesn't exist with the modus operandi that has never been done before, good luck with that. Does that make any sense, Lauren? Am I clear?
Yeah, except I kind of wanted like actually specific tasks of like if you're holding multiple conversations, how do you put those conversations together in a way that adds up more than the sum of its parts? What are the tools that you need and the specific tasks that you need to do?
What's
Like
the
Sam,
task?
if you had unlimited help, how would you direct that? If
Go
you
ahead,
had
Sam.
like a whole class of volunteers, Sam, how would you arrange this to happen?
I go back to what done means, which is the question that Josh asked.
Okay.
If, let's say, you work in iterations or sprints, let's suppose your sprints are 1 month or 6 weeks or 2 weeks, whatever you decide. And by the way, that's an important question too, how long these sprints are. But let's say you pick a 1 month sprint and you say, by the end of this month, I want to have a charter, I want to have a group calendar, I want to have a shared conversation space, I want to have a place designated as my group memory, I want to know where I put my links, I want to know where everybody shares their documents, I want to know, how we make decisions, I want to know how we put our assets together in a checking account, I want to know, how we actually disagree, how we kick people out of the organization, how we recruit for the organization. Let's say you say, I want to get all this done in the next month or two, okay? I'm going to ask myself that, by the way, for barn raising, okay? Or a different thing, okay? Then you can say, okay, what does done mean? It means I have a link here that I can share with everybody where all the group memory is going to be and they know where to post links. Done, okay? It means I have a calendar and I share this with everybody and they know how to put events on the calendar and they know how to attend and they know how to get reminders. Done, okay? That's a whole set of completion criteria. A second set of criteria could be on the actual purpose of the group, okay, which is what do I want for the collaboratory, okay? Boom. What does that look like? What does done mean? Does it mean that it's published? Does it mean it's on a website? Does it mean that 5 people have signed up for it? Does it mean that $20 are gathered for it? What does it really mean? And if you can put that together, then you know, okay, so who needs to take care of this or set of responsibilities? In GCC, there's been no notion yet of managing assets. In your efforts, I see that's always one of the very first questions you ask is how do we manage assets, right? So it's a very different kind of focus. And by the way, while I'm ranting here, I'll go back to saying GCC, the proposal was submitted in September 30th of 2017. These conversations didn't happen until after that. So these conversations were not predicated on winning the proposal. These conversations were Tammy and me saying, regardless of whether we win the proposal or not, we want to gather smart, collaborative people and see what emerges. Well, I guess, Tammy hasn't been participating for quite a while, but I'm still trying to figure that out here. And I've just stated today that I believe that this single tier model doesn't work or doesn't work well enough in a timely enough manner. So I'm going to shift gears, but that's my way of responding to you, Lauren, is some group of quote unquote organizers, okay, need to say, here's how long we make our sprint, okay? And the reason for that is at the end of the sprint, you need to look at, did you do what you said you wanted to do? And if you did, great. What do you do for the next sprint? If you didn't, then you ask yourself, what prevented you from doing it? Was it delusion? Was it, hubris? Was it lack of assets? Was it lack of energy? Was it lack of people? What was it? And then you shift and you do things differently for the next sprint. That's called a retrospective. And without retrospectives, you just end up doing the same thing forever and ever and ever and ever. And that's kind of what we do here in barn raising. Those of us that are trying to look at this retrospectively haven't yet imposed those rules, that perspective, onto the conversation. So it just kind of meanders and people think that's the way conversations happen in GCC. So I'm about to be a bit more of an asshole and start producing some more structure and holding some more structure. This is going to push some people away. but it may also make it easier for other people to come here and understand what's going on. Ari, sorry, go over.
I
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I'm sitting over here.
Heiner?
Yes. You see, I follow up this now since about 3 years with Fleming. And I think we, in the beginning of our conversation, were reaching a very central point. Our skills and our tools and our purpose, and why different communities in different languages and cultures, why they all strive for their own. If we don't, as a community, find a common purpose, in German we say Zusammenhang, Zusammenhalt. Only if we have something in context, we are stick together, we are helping each other. And so what I realize in these groups, I've seen software and systems developer a lot, is that we are not sure about the solution space. We are stuck in our individual or group problem spaces. We try with our tools around this community or that community to solve something. But the real integrate problems are not only on my personal level, it's on the level of my family, of my tribe, my nation, or whatever. And how these interlinkages work, that is possible. And that is not possible with the tools you are in command of, Sam. It is necessary what you do, it's needed, but it's not enough. We have additionally to develop something like a common frames of references, we called it covenant, to see what is in the macro view there. And then it's what is in the meso or in the micro view, and bring this together. And that means we cannot do it alphanumeric only or just with symbols or icons. We have to really step back. All this work on meta paradigms, on how really doing sign integration, all is there, it is not picked up. And that's why I feel hurt here in this group, because we are not really trying to follow up my deep dive to really what is really possible. And it's not possible 100% on the macro and on the meso at the same time, but we have to support each other. And then we don't have this fight over languages and cultures and turfs. Maybe one last sentence. You see, in the international science community, there was a mandate to harmonize data harmonization, which is not standardization, but bridging with a rough granularity in the rough. But this roughness gives you the context, the frames of references, and that is what we need to put in. And then we need to have the best groups and organization and systems designers like Sam, the best systems integrators like Joshua or whoever, but we have to really leap forward to confront the situation. Otherwise, we are going more and more into segregation, and that's what I'm observing when I'm weeping.
I can have if I can have an opportunity to tick 1 star, 2 star, 3 stars, or 5 stars after somebody's made a comment, at the end of the session, I'm going to have a look and see whose comments got all the stars. That's about giving value back to the participants, appreciating the others' comments. Over.
I'll just try to answer the question you asked also. Many good points here also being made. What seems like the big challenge still is that there's not a common purpose. So coming back again to this idea of the deep dives, the idea was if we find out what's the purpose of each person in the room, then you can have the beginning of finding a common purpose project. So that's obviously a possibility that if we figure out what each person in the room wants, then they can then engage in a certain project. But then, of course, what does this mean if we have an organization that's a learning organization? So I'm just putting out that question. I wonder what Sam thinks about this, for example. How would your model work if the purpose is, let's say, evolution of knowledge? Let's say the purpose is um, learning. Yeah.
Okay, if you want me to answer, may I?
Yeah.
Knowledge
Yeah,
is not the
okay.
purpose. Knowledge is never the purpose. Knowledge is a means towards an end. End is the thriving of the human race and the planet. The purpose is, how do we get there? It's not necessarily just knowledge, it's practices, it's values, it's, all this other stuff that goes into how we create sustainability and thrivability. So one of the 6 pillars that we identified many months ago here is this thing called co-visioning, or at least I call it co-visioning, which is how do we together describe or tell the story of what this world is that we want to live. And by the way, it's not just how does the world look in its utopian form. That's easy. That's science fiction. Anybody can write that. The hard part is how do we get there from here? How do we take all the morass of mess, evil, corruption, disparity, prejudice, and how do we get to a better world? That requires real creativity. Imagining a good world, that's easy. That any 4-year-old can do. So it's not knowledge. It's the practice. It's the mechanisms of how we create it that we're trying to come up with here, and how to do it effectively. We have been very ineffective because we've pushed very hard on one hypothesis that, to me, I'm just willing to relinquish right now, today, formally. So it's not knowledge. Knowledge is a means towards that eventual goal, but it's one of the most crucial means. If we don't have the ability to share knowledge, then we are going to be still very ineffective. So to me, it's not the end, but it's one of the most primary, crucial levers we can push over.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Nice to see you, Colin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. How you doing, Lauren? Haven't seen you in a while. It sounds like you're doing some branching off 2-tier work, which is what Sam's talking about. And I can understand that. What I add to this conversation in this context is some things that I have tried to assimilate in this area. As a software developer, I think I'm a bit of a red herring. Somebody thinks I'm going to build something first. What I'm building is a prototype idea, and you have to experiment for that. And this is a beautiful place for that. What I find as conclusions for me, since this is conclusions day for Sam, he's coming to a conclusion, making a decision perhaps. And Glenn is right. I'm kind of going in the direction with Glenn and possibly with Joshua doing a couple of things. But my time has become more restricted with becoming full-time employed. So at the same time, I'm drawn with a new set of context to engage with this group. My situation changed, so the context changes. If you change the way you look at something, the thing you look at changes. I just throw in a defensive Doug quickly. He did say in the last meeting I was in that his hope is that somebody would hear something that somebody says and make a positive change. So he's not looking to follow through on validating it. He's sort of throwing a coin in the wishing well and thinking, that's the best he can do at this time. Now, maybe that's a bad summary, but so it's easy to misinterpret what Doug is saying. And I think people who like what Doug is saying should hang with Doug. And I think Alex is one of those people, where participation and showing up is the value. So, Doug definitely gives that message. So there's some alignment there. Where I align more with Sam with the project agile methods. And I kind of laugh because I've been doing this all along. And, I'm just, Sam was trying something different. But I think it's what Heiner adds is the key. It's the solution space context you must play in. And if you have your own pet ideas and own things that you want to do, and say what you might want to do with Lauren's group, like I could say I'm a software developer. What I want to do is paint. So I'm going to paint things for some activity they're going to do. Anytime you need any painting, I'm your guy. I'll paint whatever you want. And for my day job, I'm going to do software. So, you have the opportunity to do that with what Lauren's offering. That's what's different. But what Heiner says is key. It's the solution space. Like, what needs to be done? How can I offer? And how can people who are in that solution space working now appreciate me for my skills that have nothing to do with that solution space and allow me place to talk about it and, put it somewheres and say, oh, by the way, and if you ever have one of these, we need one. So come and talk to me and we'll give you these credits. So the big thing is solution space. And the second thing is what Lauren said is remuneration or incentivizing. So if there's no value associated to it. So again, I'll take you back to my creation, which is the journey game. And the journey game is basically this thing that Sam is talking about. I forget the exact word, but you could say, put his as an adjective, journey. So a knowledge journey. He says knowledge is not the most important thing, but I'm thinking it's an understanding journey, following out from an individual's point of view, how they fit in and align. So that's the profiling. There's many different versions of it. So I think I do have a pretty good model of what we're trying to achieve here, but we're just trying to put it all in the same bag. And, Doug has his own style and format. Sam's right. It's about the fishbowl. You got two tiers. You got the tier that's running it, organizing it, taping it, putting it out, putting their time and money into it. How much money or value has Sam gotten from doing this? He's just doing it as a hobby, like I would be doing the painting, right? He has a job. So what is the incentive for the people who are here? Like, what is the profile? Are you here for a hobby? Are you serious about this? So you can put that into the calculation of what's the expectation of this person's going to complete or do what they say. So I was hoping to come here and talk more to Glenn in the open about what we were proposing to do, but it is down this solution space visualizing context. So I can just say that and leave the details of how we're going to do it, or what does a sucky profile look like for detailed conversations between, people.
Can you see all the screens? Can you see the people with their fingers? I get this feeling that there's a value in a lot of what works in the internet. There's a lot of groups doing things that work. They give the users value and they recognize the user's input with some kind of data collection. It's a value that at the end of the year, when you have the conference, those special people can be invited to go up on stage and talk to the group. Live recording for YouTube. So, a star system, a star rating system, or something similar, that the people who attend regularly are encouraged to take part in and willingly accept the challenge to take part in, will allow us to do that. It's just a matter of us getting together and saying, okay, other groups are doing that and it's what works. So why shouldn't we do what works instead of doing what doesn't work? It's all of us or none of us. It's HTML, web page design, simple code, HTML in inverted brackets. Over.
Yeah, can I just throw in, I see I forgot to answer the question that was asked earlier, but I really was clarifying for me when Sam defined the purpose, because that's also my purpose. So when I just reiterate that not, well, as I heard him, he said that knowledge isn't in itself the point, but the point is the flourishing of the human population, like whole planet Earth, the thriving of the planet. So that's obviously a very big issue. So in that sense, I mean, it's not such a surprise that this might be a little bit complicated, like because the scale is so big, and that is my purpose as well. So my problem or my challenge is kind of, where do I begin sort of with this really, really big scale, which I'm relating to. But if, for example, if Sam wants to do co-visioning, that's something I'm very interested in, for sure. I think many are, and it makes sense that one could, for example, work on one, trying to create a vision, what world would we want to live in, and two, create the path from here to there, which of course is the challenging part. So yeah, just before you go, Lauren, your question, how would it work smoothly? For me, it would be if we had ongoing conversations that were really stimulating, fun, interesting, stimulating for me personally, get to know people, so it's valuable in itself. And there's some written material that's being created over time that is very interesting, and that it's a learning journey for all the participants. That would certainly be, more or less what would work. Like if I see what would be a successful kind of a work, it would be that kind of a work that lifts people up a little bit more and more. But then it is a little hard to answer Josh's question, like, when are we finished? I mean, it's difficult if the scale is global. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Lauren?
I was wondering if we could just do like a little exercise. So this collaboratory, the subject is, how do we create mass spectacles? Like, how do we create something that's like the opposite of terrorism, that like kind of spreads like wonder or amazement or healing or something like that. So what I'm wondering is if you can help me kind of get ideas for these profiles by talking about things you've noticed about each other. Like, what could someone else in the group, can you kind of go through the people in the group and what, because I'm just inspired by what you just said, Glenn. What does each person have to give to that? So you all know each other pretty well, you've been talking. Can you just say things about each other? Like, kind of, can we go through one by one and just things you've noticed of what about that person might be helpful to the collaboratory? Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, I don't want to be rude, but at the same time, I'm not here to help you with your collaboratory. I'm here to collaborate with the people I've been collaborating with every week for the last 2 years. And I would love to hear, Colin and Glenn, what you're up to. And I would love to schedule another call with you, Lauren, if you want to talk to the GCC about this, put it on the Facebook, set a date. We do have open Fridays right now if you want to use that. And I would definitely recommend to use that Open Friday experiment for exactly this conversation. But I didn't come here for that conversation. So when you asked, do you want to have that experiment? I don't want to have that experiment. I'll say straight up with the group and be clear. Okay. And I do want to hear, Colin, what you and Glenn are working on, because I know we're getting to the top of the hour, and I would really like to hear that. With that, I'm complete.
Well, I can give you a quick summary. I don't want to take a bunch of time either, because I still even think this is a good place for summaries, but not a good place to roll it out. Like another scheduled meeting for that would be perfect, right? And so me and Glenn have had a couple of 1 or 2 meetings maybe, but Christmas happened and we've just been very busy. But of some of his drawings that relate to me in a multimodal interface to context, so that your data is kind of normalized going in. It's a navigation system. It's crazy. It's nothing anybody's going to buy from me, but I think following that and taking from maybe people like Heiner and Sam and anybody who's been really thinking about this heavily, I think that the journey, an incentivized journey, and the incentive for me is gaining understanding. I think that's what curiosity drives. Maybe many people aren't curiosity, so you got to find what their drive is and why they want to go around the journey. So I'm seeing the journey as the engine or a visualization of the motion of what's happening. So you can see, like, I am here, I am there. We could do a visualization for what the GCC is. I see it like movie theaters and things as you're walking down the street. Like if you want to go, like Sunday, for example, for right or for wrong, I've coined it a bit more spiritual. So I call it, it's kind of like going to church when you go to Doug's session, right? You really get to feel heartwarming and what matters, and unblocking is what it's about. I think, that's what maybe religion's real. I don't know. I think is a matter of us being able to share who we are and find each other with a different incentivized structure. So I think that's what's changing, is the incentivized structure. And maybe that's what's missing to make this strong. I don't think just showing up should give you the same amount of money as holding, recording, and annotating the shows, for example. It's just not the same. I do think when maybe there should be a fishbowl where the main 3 people kind of steer it, where you got a data butler and some memory going on and where you're going. And if you have a special guest, maybe you can like scratch the needle across and do something different, but basically you know where you're going. Anyway, I don't want to go too far. Glenn and I are kind of agreeing to work on a visualization of a context that one could consider a navigational journey that could be like a dashboard for going around the quest map. And so you know where you are, what you're doing, and so you kind of know what your deliverables are, and you can get help from mentors, which is a huge incentive. I think that you can align with people instead of arguing with them about syntax or trying to I don't know. The better you can understand each other, I think the farther you can go together. And that may relate to speed. I don't know, Sam. So yeah, I don't think you can just show up and shoot the shit and expect an airplane to fly and pick us all up and take us to Hawaii. Like, that's just not going to happen. It costs a lot of money for airplanes. So another thing I've said as well, as a test. So if you want to test, Sam, a test case, what would happen if we just inherited $1 million, the GCC? Like, what would happen? Would it be the end of us, or we actually do something? Who would distribute that money? Anyway, if a certain project like Lawrence or something that's been identified got the money, then maybe there would be a little bit of assumed, well, we'll put it here, and these 5 people who are the leaders or the central people of this project are going to kind of figure out how to include the other people. Like, we're taking resumes, basically. So I don't really know how you can get away from the old structure of incentive. I just think that we can, the old model of incentive. Even in jobs, your family link to that is the money you make to bring home to, for the survival of your family and friends and community, what you can give back. It seems to be, most of the incentive is in dollars. So you may end up doing a job you don't want. That's why I was kind of riffing about wanting to be a painter. Anyway, I'll leave it right there.
Alex?
The current. Echo. was talking about currency. It doesn't have to be dollars. If you want appreciation for your effort because you've got to pay bills and buy food for your family, then your value to the group can be growing via manner, via people liking your opinions and your contribution. If we measure the manner, then that becomes a value data set. It's a piece of data, right? And that
But
can be used.
how does that fit into the retrospective?
Convert it to
Like
hollow
that's what
coin.
Sam's saying. Like, how does that fit in?
Well, you
Like, how
want
does that fit
value.
into a retrospective, though?
If you
Right.
want
So
value,
in Doug's group, you might be able to find that.
so you want value.
Right. Like I don't. Yes.
You want value or not?
By the way, you guys are talking over each other.
Well, that's the problem. It decreases the value of the conversation. So who interrupted who just now?
It may or may not. It may or may not. Like you're commenting on what I was saying. So you're steering what I just said in a different direction. I may have to.
You mentioned.
Since I don't have anything written.
Yeah, but hang on.
Okay, let's
hang
move
on. You mentioned dollars.
No,
right?
no, I don't mean to cause
Hey,
you
Colin,
problems.
can we let Alex finish? Colin, please.
Colin mentioned dollars.
Yeah,
he brought
sure.
up. He brought up the
say,
big dollar, right? That dollars and cents, and that's money. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be money. It can be manner. It can be a measure of value that doesn't involve dollars. Over.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Colin?
And I'm just saying it has to fit into a retrospective here at barn raising if we're going to move forward with Sam's proposal that we have, some kind of a purpose to what we're doing. So, for example, people that greeters at Walmart have a great value, but they make as much as the manager or other people. I don't know. But greeters at Walmart, they're there, they show up, they greet the people who come in. So if I guess it comes down to roles is what I'm saying. If people are clear on what their roles are within the solution space, that's fine. Just to say I'm here in the solution space and I'm going to make waves.
You just got muted there, Colin.
Yeah, Colin got muted.
Yeah, I was just saying the way to measure this stuff is the real trick. And the retrospective is how you kind of say, well, this is what we're expecting to happen. This is basically the story of
Okay.
end to end of this feature.
So it's getting close to the top of the hour. It's a very sad day for me because I'm thinking of the implications of what I'm accepting now. And so I just wanted to say, as part of my closing, and this does not need to be end of the conversation, but I have a visitor coming, so I'm probably going to depart soon, is that barn raising or something derived from barn raising will take on a two-tier structure. And that's going to include some people. It's going to push some people away. I see that already. That's just what naturally happens. But given that that's a structure that I now accept, I'm going to invite some people to help me organize something akin to barn raising, or maybe even barn raising itself. If you're included, it's because I value the kinds of conversations you support and participate in. If you're not included, you'll probably take it as a personal slight. It's not intended to be that, but just including everybody in barn raising seems to be a little bit unusual. On the other hand, there's only about 8 or 9 people here, so maybe we just have that. But then again, we end up with exactly what we have for the last 3 years. So that's one sad realization. I have so much to respond to on what everybody's been saying, but it's so sad that I don't know I can actually say it. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Sam, I'm wondering if you're torn between holding 2 forums, because you say this isn't your show, but you are taking a major role in facilitating the event. So maybe you couldn't facilitate 2 events where you have this special seed you're trying to sprout, because that's how I see my growth in this group, is to sprout a new seed. So it looks to me like instead of taking barn raising down, it's still an experiment. You might designate someone else to be the host on this time, and you might pick a new time or switch times. But do you see it as a mutually exclusive decision?
No, I do not see it as mutually exclusive. I see that this has established a culture here on Saturday mornings. And what I want to do differently, if I usurp this time for this new structure, it's going to piss off some people. So I'm thinking about starting a different thread of conversation, in which case I may participate less in this one. So I've still yet to make that determination myself.
If this one keeps going, I don't see how that's going to piss anyone off.
That's what I mean.
Sam's having pregnancy pains. He's going to sprout something new. It's growth. Sounds like growth.
Would you want to say a little bit, Sam, about what you would like to see? Like, what would you be your dream for barn racing?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Because that's sort of in the background here all along.
Yes.
We want to hear it.
I would like to answer that. Could I answer that next Saturday? Because there's quite a bit. And it's not yet been fully prepared for presentation. If you'd like, I could actually give you that version of what I would like to see in barn raising and the kinds of structures that I would like to invite people to participate in. And then I could probably then say, well, keep barn raising as it is. I'll hand the reins to somebody else, or I'll still do it, and I'll set up a different time. Or people could say, hey, that's what we want barn raising to be. Let's just keep this time. But let's have that conversation next week, if that's okay.
Can't we just have a preview?
A teaser.
Okay, the teaser is that we adopt those 6 pillars of barn raising / GCC that we've bandied about now for several years. And some of you may not know exactly what those 6 are, but I've shared them many times in different workflows and other artifacts. The second is we actually set up a set of places where we actually do use these places as shared group memory. Google Docs is one of them. YouTube is one of them. Trello is likely to be another one. And that we have a sprint period, probably somewhere along the order of a month or 6 weeks. But I really think that adopting a more, as Josh mentioned, an engineering mindset, an engineering practice towards the idea that we are trying to create something or co-create something is what I would like to see in barn raising. Now, the creation is not necessarily software. The creation is initially a co-visioned artifact, a co-visioning artifact. That's what I'd first like to see for us. And I'd like to say in, let's say, 6 months or 3 months, we have something that we can tell the world, this is our co-vision. This is our vision that we have co-created together. And every sprint beyond that, we either strengthen it or improve it until it's relatively stable. And as an offshoot of that, that vision document includes how do we think systemically? How do we be the way we want ourselves to be in order to co-create this thing? How do we want to interact with each other? Many of you have seen many hints throughout the last 12 months at least, where more and more artifacts have been shared. I would like to adopt some of that as structure. Minimum viable structure. I don't want to come with, here's the 17 roles. In fact, I envision only 2 roles to begin with. And then we can make it more and more elaborate as needed. But the first structure should be enabling rather than restrictive. So those are rambling thoughts. I know that they're not super compelling right now. I'd like a chance to take a week to try and put it together for review.
And what would you add for the incentive part?
Nothing. If you're not here for the purpose of creating a good world, then you're here for the wrong purpose.
I won't dispute that statement, but I do think it's an and you need to go in a way where people are like, one of the ways you see they do it in the entertainment world is they give you tokens or badges or whatever, likes
I'm
or
not here to
thumbs up.
collaborate with people who care about tokens and badges.
Well, it's a psychology thing.
I know. I don't want people who are motivated by that psychology. I
I'm
want to
not
see the
saying
bigger
people
picture
are.
of the burning planet, people who can't breathe, the species that are disappearing. I want those people.
Okay, well, what I'm telling you is I might want to hook my boat to somebody who has, speaking what you're saying, maybe Heiner, and says, and we've also just got a contract for $10,000.
Yeah,
Because I think we're
I'm
doing the
not
right.
saying it's unimportant. I'm saying that's not
Yeah.
core to me.
No, I agree. It's not the
As
first
bigger
thing.
projects need to get taken on, they need to have assets. They need to leverage resources.
Right. Okay. So anyway, I think Joshua was talking a lot about some of the incentives that he was looking at adding, like the value added to collaborating with him with certain tools. And, we talked a bit back and forth about a type of a structure where people could gain assets by getting closer and closer to the goal. But, it's a very difficult thing. Lauren's doing it. DAOs, I think, are doing it. But there's always that incentive. And I don't mean to
Yep.
discount what you're
I don't
saying,
want to
but
minimize that. I'm just saying that that's not core to me, and that could be one of my personal faults. Okay, that could be a deep personality flaw in myself. Okay, but here's where I land on that. If we can't conceive and co-vision with the health of the planet in mind centrally, but we're doing it in such a way that we can game the tokens or game the reputation or game whatever it is or game the compensation, then that's a distracting motivation to me. If you're not yet motivated enough by keeping this planet beautiful and healthy, then you're probably peripheral to that group that I really want to work with.
so it's
Now,
altruistic.
I would say so, because all of this compensation business, value is only realized in retrospect. It cannot be realized right now up front. If I say, these videos are worth $10,000, people are just going to laugh at me. If I say they're worth $0, people are going to laugh at me. If this turns out to be useful in 5, 10, 15 years from now, people think, hey, this actually germinated something useful. At that time, that value that's recognized by those people is different than what we realize here today. And yet, value is only transferred, I believe, right now in transactional events. Somebody gives me $5. Somebody gives me $500. Somebody gives me a bit token, whatever. Whatever bit coin. But that's a single transaction at a single moment in time. That doesn't recognize, the life's contribution that is Heiner's life. It doesn't recognize the life contribution that is decades of activity on Josh's behalf, for Occupy. It doesn't recognize what I've been trying to do with Doug Engelbart for a couple of decades, right? Which right now seems to be nothing. But I'm hoping that this actually turns into something, So these methods of compensation that are transactional to me are artificial. They
Okay.
kind of make things work, but they're not true recognition of value. If
Okay,
the
a
value
different
was
angle.
truly recognized, Doug Engelbart would have died a billionaire.
Yeah, I agree. But
Okay?
a different angle, keep it short. So people who have jobs and can do this part-time as opposed to people who can involve full-time or less. There's an average there where, you need to have some kind of survival mechanism on how much you can dedicate to this. I don't want to belabor that any more than just the structure of whether you're
Yeah, I recognize that. I face that every weekend when I say, hey, I could be having brunch with my daughter.
or I can only give Glenn an hour and a half after this call because I got to go meet my daughter and then I got to get ready for work. I got some things I got to go over, right? So prepare for next week. So now I didn't have that 3 weeks ago. I didn't have that slot taken. Now it's taken. So, you know, I think a month to 6 weeks is good to plan something of a medium-sized contribution. At least wrestle with it. Definitely, that time period's difficult and variability in the value.
Yeah, Lauren.
I mean, what it sounds to me, so if I were coming to you and I was like, so I want to build this software that does everything for everyone, you would immediately be like, Lauren, that's not going to work. So I think one thing that's the issue is like when I hear what you're saying is that you need to take a smaller piece, not just like we're going to figure out how we're going to get to this world that we want. First of all, I don't think it's actually, not everyone wants the same things or imagines the same utopia, so I don't think that's true. And I think that if you could narrow it down to what this can actually do and the part that you are going to play, like a more specific um, function, then you can measure whether you're getting there. If you're just like, oh, we're going to imagine like a great world and how to fit, that's too big, you'll never feel like, okay, we've accomplished something. So like, what can I mean, and I think also everyone here is clearly committed to like a better world and wants to get there. I don't see
Yeah.
anyone who is not.
Just quickly,
Okay.
if Glenn and I put a place for Sam's on the map, what would it look like? And it would look like the things that he just said, which would be a different building than what Josh had set up for a facade, which would be different. So, you know, there'd be no confusion when you're talking to Sam that it's, you know, his time is all altruistic. If you're not thinking about giving back to the future, then you're not as aligned with him as you thought you were. Where somebody else is saying, well, you know, I'm a freelancer. I can give a lot of value, but, you know, I need value back. And those are the type of people like you have to rent equipment from when you want to have something, or Josh has to pay for website space. Like they're not just going to donate that unless you do find somebody who's willing to donate it. But, you know, yeah, it definitely comes down to solution space and context in that regard of how much you bite off, why you're biting it off, and not what's your shitty profile look like, but, you know, what is Sam's, you know, value. And I think Lauren was trying to elicit that from us, you know, what do we think of Sam? So if Glenn and I were to draw Sam's place, you know, Sam's COI and Sam's 6 pillars and Sam's 4 agreements and Sam's look at the future, your worldview, like, is it good to add your political view, or is that something that's on the private map? Like, are we talking about global social democracy, or what, you know, what kind of does it look like at, you know, anyway, I'll just leave it there. It's definitely about building that visual in my mind so that we don't step on each other's toes and get
I've
better
got
context.
to go shortly, so I'll check out with this thought. The sovereignty that Glenn was talking about intrigued me because we've all got original sovereignty, each one of us on the planet, right? Global sovereignty. That's global sovereignty that belongs to each individual person. It's different from national sovereignty. National sovereignty comes from regimes. So common law, and my niece down in Sydney works as a stenographer, and she's studying criminology at university. She thinks my book will be a bestseller because it's about an event similar to Eckhart Tolle's, different situation, and his book made about 78 million. So if my book is a bestseller, I'm willing to donate $100,000 to the GCC to use in any way that sees fit, building the cohesion and the platform. Over.
Yeah, I think I'll take a little check out as well. And Colin, like if you want to have a little meeting afterwards, I'm up for that. Yeah, I really like what Sam said about not being in here for tokens. Like that, I'll make that clear too. I don't want to have anything to do with tokens with my project, at least. I mean, for me, it's a major distraction. But I mean, we could be incentivized. I think we would be really incentivized if we had a process where we did continually create something which we personally think is very interesting. And this idea Lauren shared, which was how do we create the opposite of terrorism, let's say, could we, for example, create something that could spread all around the world and really inspire and lift people up. And that would certainly be a great inspiration to be able to do that. And I do think it has something like that could have something to do with redefining who we are. And so, because what Lauren said there was that what are the qualities of the different people in the room, and this relates a lot to this idea of appreciative inquiry, which Gertrude has gone into, and so that would also be, I think, a great incentive if one worked in a way that created artifacts that really could appreciate people for their talents, their gifts, their unique contributions, whatever that might be. And in my opinion, if something like that would be created, that in itself would be hugely beneficial for the whole planet, because the main challenge, I think, globally today is psychological. That there's a lot of depression and confusion and information overload too, like what Josh was talking about, is obviously a very big issue. So if we can create something that just inspires people and maybe even build something from their contributions that sort of retrospectively points back to them and shows that their contribution is valuable, if it just can be channeled in the right way, that's going to create an immediate psychological change. So it will have a transformative effect on the participants. So, what could really work is if you have this learning journey where people are creating something continuously, and they're also evolving continuously personally to a better, more mentally, emotionally fit state. And maybe you learn skills that are important. Maybe you share knowledge, many of those things. So yeah, that would be kind of a successful thing. Yeah, Joshua.
Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I just wanted to share with the group, I don't know if anyone got the signals, but Facebook just added something that I've been asking them to add for over a year, which is the idea of mentor-mentee. And it's a new feature in Facebook for the group. And I went in and I just, because I'm one of the admins of the group, allowed it to happen just to figure out how it works. So I was hoping that as a group, we could all start to practice this new feature and see if it works for us, where you can decide to be either mentor or mentee or both. You can mentor certain people. So I was hoping between now and next Saturday, we could all play with that feature, see if we can get it to work. I did put my little profile in it, but if anyone has any information of how it worked for you or didn't work for you, we could talk about that next Saturday. So I just wanted to bring that to the group. I don't know if that signal came across everyone's desk, but mentor and mentee is a new feature in the Facebook group for GCC. So I did put my profile in there. I don't know. I was waiting for a signal. I haven't gotten one yet. So I just wanted to share that before we go. Thank you.
I saw it with you and Alex had put yourself in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you were just talking about, Glenn, to me, that sounds like a healthy solution space where you're allowed to explore and learn and understand. And this mentor-mentee thing is critical to moving ahead, definitely. If you had to learn everything yourself, how would you do it? Like, you're not allowed to use the internet because that's mentors built the internet, right? So we can't do anything alone. So the better quality of the solution space, defining the context of what we're trying to define, how we would test if we're near the end, if we have a workable solution. And I'll just throw it there. And my closing thing, I got to go. What we're dealing with here are human issues, and they're wicked problems. And the ones where we're running out of time and we're part of the problem, those are super wicked problems. So, there is no known solution. So we do have to take bite-sized pieces, and we do have to use our wayfinding. And one of the things I'm trying to do as a theme is not find a way to harvest what has happened, but to work better in the flow as it's happening. So navigate in real time with mentors and mentees, definitely. Anyway, thanks, Josh.
Let me end with my amusement and frustration. You see, when I hear you use one word like token, then everybody is already thinking, oh, this is money, this is $100 or whatever. But what we always meant with empowerment in giving voice is the totally opposite, like helping a child grow. And so in this environment, I felt we have to know each other much more, because here, even after 2 years, you don't get this idea I had on be short, be terse. I mentioned it recently, requisite parsimony, that you are aware of the time you take or the money you use, and that you use the requisite leniency, meaning, and everything. And that is something like an order code we should embody in future conversations, because otherwise 2.5 hours or so is much too much for me.
Thanks, Heiner.
Actually, I think we've done a little bit better today than last week in terms of that, being more concise. So it's good to see.
Jaswinder, you've been very quiet today. Any thoughts? I'll take that as a no. Anyway, I apologize for my depressive demeanor. It's just sad to me that we haven't yet proven that collective intelligence can be demonstrated really well here. That to me is sad. I think there's other value that has definitely come out of these conversations. I think that, meeting as conversationalists and strollers in a town square is very valuable. I do not want to diminish any of that. I think there's been this larger wish, this hope that we could be more collectively intelligent. And I have not yet proven for myself, that we know how to do it. So I take that as a failure on my part, but it also is it's a thing that keep us asking from time to time. So even though I'm going to shift gears a bit, it's still in the back of my mind whether or not eventually we can understand and then demonstrate and practice collective intelligence. But until then, we'll shift gears a little bit. And I apologize in advance for pissing people off, where my different demeanor and conduct starting today, maybe starting next week, but it's going to be a little bit different. Over, and I do love y'all.
Sam?
Sam, I don't think you failed, Sam. I think you're looking without memory and without navigation. You're expecting people to have collective intelligence. We need to have navigation. We need to have memory. You're right about that. Go ahead. Sorry, Lauren.
I mean, I seem to recall that like people have told Sam like several times, like, Sam, just tell us what to do. I remember that.
You know,
There's several
I
people he
recall
told
that. I recall that.
for that.
Thank you for bringing that up. I recall that I specifically have not done so because I've been in this experiment where I've tried to see, can we do it co-creatively? That's what I'm saying I was trying to keep pushing on, okay, as a single tier model. And so I might be more willing to do that now, given that I've accepted this, at least this temporary conclusion I've come to. But it was explicitly heard and not taken up. I recognize that, Lauren. So apologize for that too.
I just want to say also, Sam, you've done a lot. There is a lot of artifacts. There's a lot of folders. There's a lot of files, a lot of Trello boards. There's a lot even on my computer just from the GCC. New year, I'm trying to take everything and put it into the right box. There's so much that has been done. What I think is insane is we don't stop and look at the usefulness of it, extract the usefulness and move forward. So I'm looking forward to your new moving forward in whatever structure it ends up being. But let's just stop and take, there's so much value. What did Glenn just say? 3,000 notes are in his notebook. I bet at least 1,000 of those are from GCC. Colin's got thousands of Coggle maps. I just went on Coggle the other day and saw every notification of every change that Colin made in Coggle because I was following it from the first moment I met Colin and got onto Coggle, and I was getting a notification. So in my data set, I've got every change Colin made to that specific Coggle, and there's probably another 400 new Coggle maps on top of that map. So I just want to remind ourselves, we have assets, we have things we've done, but we haven't decided how we're going to utilize the value of that moving forward and what vocabulary, what ontology we put to that and categorize it in what way to move forward collectively. And like you said, it's not happening fast. It's very, very slow, but there are assets that we've created. We have, the minute that Google comes up with a artificial intelligent bot to go through every video, I will ask you to have the folder of all the videos, and can we just press sort, aggregate, AI, and go through every sound bite, turn it into data sets. I'm just saying, let's just be aware of what we're doing. I'm ranting, I'm complete, but thank
well
you.
Said. Well said. And can I also add what that?
Let me just finish, Glenn. Let me
just
finish, and I'll let you add. Absolutely. So I just want to say I'm a part of a group from Occupy called Anonymous. And one of the things that Anonymous puts out in every video, we are allegiance, we do not forget. I don't like the part where it says we do not forgive. I'm more forgiving, but we do not forget. We are here to make the world a better place. So with that, I'm complete. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, and could I also add, like, if we had succeeded in solving collective intelligence in 2 years, I mean, that would be totally revolutionary. So, I mean, let's keep that in mind. I mean, people have been struggling with this forever. So just the fact that we've been making a little progress in that direction, I mean, certainly it's a promising sign. So I think it just has to be slow. I mean, I don't see any other way.
Well, that's all real good stuff. I got to go, guys. Thanks. I really like this meeting. I agree with Josh that a lot of value has been created by Sam and the rest of the people who have contributed to things. Overall, I think Sam's inkling about having a memory is in line with me, and being able to navigate it is the key. And if you're not navigating a healthy solution space, then you're going to have a very hard time. And we're working with wicked problems. So don't be surprised if it's difficult. You're right, Glenn. Anyway, if you want to talk in like 20 minutes, Glenn, I'll wait for you can Zoom me or MSN me or whatever. Thanks. See you guys.
I am willing to leave this space open for anyone who wants to continue.
I think I'll have to go now. But yeah, thanks. This was yeah, very rich as usual. So good to see you today, Lauren. So hope you can show up now and then. It's always
Dana, it was so lovely to see you
yeah.
and everyone.
Yeah, Lauren, I was going to say, if you have 5 minutes and want to tell me what you and Charles are doing, I'd love to have that conversation. I just don't want to have it at the same time because it gets all crisscrossed. So I
didn't mean to step on anyone's foot.
I know your intention. I've known you for a little while now, so I know where you're coming from. So it's just good to see you. And I did read briefly what you and Charles are doing while the conversation was going, but I couldn't keep my full focus to.
I'm surprised you could read it at all.
Okay, I'm logging off now. So yeah, have a good day, guys.
So how is Charles doing? How is he?
Good. Good. Yeah, he's doing well.
Good. And how are you doing with all the craziness? Are you in Paris? Are you in the city of Paris?
We're outside. We're in a place called Esbly. It's like the countryside. So it's half an hour outside of Paris.
Oh, good. Good. So you're not in the city with all the craziness.
No, but we're kind of trapped here.
Yeah, because that's the hub, right? You can't get through.
Yeah, it's been a month without any, without the trains.
Yeah, I dated a woman from Paris who grew up there, and she's Moroccan. So she grew up in the ghetto of Paris. And the stories I heard and watching the different riots that were going on at the time we were dating, that was in 2005. They were flipping cars over and burning them. And they go hard. Paris protesters, they're the original OG, you know, the French Revolution is the OG revolution. So they have a history of going hard. So please be safe. Yeah, take care of the kids. It's I'm waiting for that to happen in America. I feel like if we don't get order soon, that's going to happen here. They're ramping up for that. I don't know if you're following American politics, but
I am, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Trump just got $10 million after they impeached him. He used that fuel to get everyone riled up. So he's using all the fuel he can. And it's all coming to a head, which is going to, I would say, happen somewhere around the summer after the primaries. And we'll see who's, that's what I was trying to tell you a year and a half ago. I don't know if it was clear. I was like, we can't do anything with technology until the world settles, because all these countries are all like, you know, Bolivia, Venezuela, Malaysia, Hong Kong, China. Like, it's just, you know, things are too volatile right now to create anything stable, in my opinion, especially collaboration wise. So
well, the idea is actually to kind of use a little bit of abracadabra to talk technology into existence. So it's basically the kind of the opposite technique of engineers thinking, okay, what do people need? And then kind of building it out. It's more like, what do we actually want? And then from there, making a real, like, the very simple kind of human prototype of just like creating algorithms that anyone can understand, and then testing them and saying, is this what we actually like? So if you're making a recommendation engine, what is the algorithm? And when I say algorithm, it's like the step-by-step, actually human instructions of how you recommend things to people, or how you what's the protocol
Yeah.
for doing that.
If I can share with you, you're probably aware of this. I know Charles is aware of this. We had conversations, but he could never quite grasp it because he's not a computer scientist or computer engineer, but he's quite intelligent. In the software development for the last 20 years, before we really invented cloud computing, right when cloud computing started to be a thing, it's called the API, Application Interface. And you've heard that, I'm sure, a million times, but there is now the ability with some very secure connections with the API to make everything connect and then create your algorithmic, if you will, if that, then this. So there's a software development across Microsoft, Google, Apple, every piece of software that's in the cloud. You can connect them all with a program called Zapier, Z-A-P-I-E-R. And there's recipes, aka algorithms, that are written by the community of the whole. So you can say, if someone does this and fills out their profile, then send it to this. And if this gets triggered, send it to this. And so I highly recommend you and Charles for collaborology between Lumio, whatever you name it. There's thousands of software as a service. Use Zapier to start to create, and a flow chart. I was working with Fallon on this, but he never actually took me up on the offer. I paid $150 a year to use Lucid Charts. Are you familiar with Lucid Charts? Lucid Charts is already pre-done templates of different algorithmic flows, from everything from funnels to collaboration to whatever. But Lucid Charts is really, really, really powerful for everything from Venn diagrams to software engineering to whatever. But you can start a collaborology by saying, if that, then this. And I think that's the key to doing anything in this modern age. Is the big thing in my digital marketing company that all my clients are asking me for is, how do I get listed on search engines, and how do I do Facebook Lives, and how do I get my algorithms of the search engines to recognize all these videos and content that I'm creating? And the problem is, we're moving from video now to voice. Voice activation is finally a thing. In 2020, voice is the thing. And in order to make voice work for you, for collaborology, so you can just say to the computer, hey, what did the collaborology group of Lauren and Charles do last week? You can go ahead and program it onto your website called a rich snippet. Tell me if I'm going too fast here. I'm just trying to give you a bunch of information so you guys can move forward. But a rich snippet allows you to organize your data to be recognized by voice activation. So I recommend starting to use the tools that are already existing right now to tie together the 800 social media channels to grab the information where it actually lives, not where you want it to live, but in Twitter, in Instagram, in Pinterest, in Facebook, in all these places. And if you go to the Facebook developer, or I know Charles is big on OneNote. Microsoft just did an amazing thing. They restructured, I don't know if you're up on the business side of tech in Silicon Valley, but they restructured all of Microsoft and they restructured all of Google. So Google is no longer Sergey Brin and Larry Page. They left. And Microsoft is no longer a proprietary company. They open source Windows. Windows is now free. So things are, what I'm trying to say is things are shifting so fast. Take some time to really figure out how things are shifting before you build something.
So basically the question is, there's tons of software to use, but I am not sure what you should mandate in terms of like, we're all going to do this, or if you should just list that as a possibility. Like what what software would you advise being mandatory that everyone has to use?
This is what I'm trying to say. Whatever software you use, it's triggers and actions. So if you think in terms of recipes and triggers and action, if I use Coggle and I create a new board, then trigger another board on Trello, or trigger a note on OneNote, or trigger this on that. And the only way to manage this crazy web of multiple software, of multiple actions, in my opinion, is to create a ticketing system where things are either, it's like a switch for engineering, it's either open or close. So an action opened and did the action close. And that's the way every group that I know of that's successful manages any type of collaboration, is it's either open or closed.
Okay.
So a ticket is prioritized, it's open, it has a priority, it has a date, it has a person in charge of it, and then they can pass it off to somebody else, change the date, change the priorities. But when it closes, the information goes to the knowledge repository. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. So I'm sorry to ask you again, I must sound stupid.
Okay.
Does that mean that you have to have a project management software, or is there a way that you can do that?
Can you share your screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you want to see?
I'll just show you.
Show me on
Just go to Google.
Okay.
On Google.
Yeah, I have so many screens open. I'm not quite ready to share.
That's why I was asking, because we sit and talk about it, but if you just go to Google and you search for what the it actually is, there's many ticketing software as a service places. And as far as finding which one is the best for you and for Charles and for your new group, I recommend there's a lot. If you just go to Google and pick the two that you see that are listed the highest amount of customer saying this is the best software for the price, best value, then say A versus B. So you put in, say, Zendesk versus Zoho, or HubSpot versus Agile CRM. And if you do that in Google, it'll give you the actual details of which one does what. And if they check off the boxes for what your collaboratory needs, then they have usually a 14 to 21 day trial, and you can try it out as a group and see if it works. And I think that's what I heard Sam saying is so clear about software development and software engineering. It's a very objective space. It either works or it doesn't work. And if it works for your team, do it. If it stops working for your team, write code that makes it work.
What kind of software, what is that called then?
It's
management
called,
software, or is it something else?
No, it's customer relationship management software. It's CRM software for ticketing systems is usually under CRM.
So I think we had, Charles has a nonprofit. I think we had access to, it's a really famous one. It's tours.
Here, Here, so I'm going to go to Google and type in CRM, which means usually all CRM systems have a ticketing service. CRM systems, and then you have to pick which garden you're working in. That's the hard part. That's what I was trying to show Charles when we stopped working together, was how to work between the Apple garden, the Google garden, and all the other gardens that are out there.
Salesforce.
What?
I think we might have access to Salesforce.
Just use Salesforce. There you go.
Okay.
It's got everything built in. Salesforce is very expensive, but it's one of the top that almost every corporation uses. It's, yep.
Okay.
CRM system. So if you go Salesforce integration with OneNote, then you're all set. You're done. You don't need to build anything. You just have to build within that. Then you build the algorithms and the software within that. So I'm typing in OneNote integration with Salesforce, and you'll see it'll lead you to Zapier, which is what I've been trying to explain.
Oh, okay.
So how connect your OneNote to Salesforce integration in 2 minutes, and that comes up at Zapier.com.
Okay.
So, and then I go here to OneNote Salesforce integration, and it tells me you can have it so create a new attachment in Salesforce, triggers a new thing for OneNote. So in other words, every time someone works and collaborates inside of Salesforce, when they click done, that will save that as a note in OneNote that Charles can look over. And then you can share access to those note files in OneNote and collaborate just like you do with a Google Doc.
Okay.
So the way that I've worked with a couple different people, I think they had up to 800 people in this one project, all using Google Docs, and they just had everything set into actions. If that, then this. If you read this form and you agreed, click here. If you've signed up to the Lumio, click here. And then by triggering all those actions, you solve all your problems of no one's using Lumio. Well, they can't get to the next step if they haven't agreed to actually make an agreement in Lumio.
Okay.
Then you solve your problem. But if it allows, so the problem is an engineering problem where if someone can not use Lumio and still be in the group, that's the problem.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So even, you know, when I'm talking to you, even if I don't use, which is probably Zapier,
Zapier.
I think I just understood the, how do you spell it? Can you write it down?
Z is in zebra, A is in apple, P is in Paul, I is in information, E is in Edward, R is in Ralph. Zapier.com.
Okay. In French, it's Zapier, so who knows? Anyway.
Je comprends. Je parle en français un peu.
Anyway, I understand. So what you're saying from a human level, you have to structure it so that, and this is kind of what I'm doing with the funding. If you get onto Lumio and actually do something, that can trigger something else to happen. That kind of unlocks a new ability for people to do. So that way you can kind of have a strategy of using different softwares and not being like, come on guys, let's all go to Lumio. And everyone's like, yeah.
So started off, you have the website that you put up earlier. I forgot what that was called. What was that? Where I read the white paper?
Oh, the Collective Intelligence Collaboratory.
Okay, Collective Intelligence Collaboratory dot, what is the dot com? Okay, so this is how all of the internet works. I need to give like tutorials for people starting out with this. That's a domain name. So that actually links, that's your identification of who you are on the internet with all the other software. That's your domain. Okay?
Uh-huh.
So that domain you can link to a database. That domain has its own database, and that database has what's called an application interface, an API.
Okay.
So if you go to that domain, let's just say you link that domain to MailChimp, which is an aggregator and collector of emails and a database of all the information taken in the forms of those collections.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could use like Google Forms like you used before. So that domain links to that Google form. If that information is filled out in that form, put that information into, and this is where it gets a little tricky, but if you said submit, put that information into Lumio, put that information into OneNote, put that information here, put that information there. The problem with software development is how do you make sure all that information doesn't become corrupted and changed? Like Charles goes in and writes his own notes. How does that not update the other one? Uh-huh. So the way to do that, if you want to, there's a company that specializes in that. They're called PieSync, P-I-E-Sync, S-Y-N-C. Uh-huh. And they're the aggregators between all of these APIs that say, if this field validation rule is here, then put it also here and put it here, and make sure that everything is synced across multiple databases.
Oh,
And then you can build a giant, huge piece of software that's on top of all the smaller pieces of software, which is how the internet actually runs, because that's what drives me nuts about watching everyone in the Bitcoin world and all these places trying to build stuff that's just on a separate, isolated place, AKA a distributed peer-to-peer, blah, 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 that doesn't interface here because the validation rules don't connect.
okay.
Meaning people in the blockchain that are making blockchain technologies, they have to do it on specific blockchains like Ether versus Bitcash versus, and they're just creating these other ledgers, and then those ledgers have to be actually validated by being solved. So a block has to be solved in order to be validated to actually work in the system. And that's the problem with the blockchains themselves, is they're actually not distributed for everybody. It's not open source software. It's very closed, actually. So I don't know if you're up on politics, but China just decided to put out their own blockchain. And Facebook is becoming their own country. They're getting out of the United States and they're creating their own Libra. So a year and a half from now, there'll be the Facebook nation fighting with China, fighting with the United States of America, and the software cyber wars are going to be crazy because it's all linked to actual money, and they're taking money out of the system and turning it into digital money. So I have to get back to work, but I hope this is helpful. I mean, the truth of collaborating with anyone is finding out who you want to work with and how they want to work. Like Charles, when I collaborated with him, I just got onto Microsoft, connected to OneNote, and we were working. Like the minute I was on his system, we're flying. And if I work with you, Lauren, I get onto Google and I get into your Google Drive and the folders and files, and we're flying. And the one other thing, if you haven't gotten tuned into this, are you using Google's website? It's in Google Drive. If you plus, you can build your own website. I would highly recommend, no offense to your website, but it looked, it was hurt my eye personally, but those colors are a little too bright, those fruits and stuff like that. It was like,
Okay.
But what server is your website on currently?
So I built it out on Wix. I got the domain from GoDaddy and I built it out on Wix. So I could kind of co-op it with Charles.
Wix's API is not going to be as friendly when you start using Zapier. The API to connect to the website itself and move, Wix doesn't allow you to have a database. That's the bottom line.
Okay.
So that's why I use WordPress, is WordPress is built on a database called SQL, Structured Query Language. And that lets you interface between fields. And then there's a plugin for WordPress called Custom Field Management. And that lets you create custom fields in your database that can interface with Lumio, with other things. So you'll find Wix will just fail on you if you try to do software development with Wix. But it's great for just a flat.
One thing I might do is just, because I don't really have the skills to do all of this with Zapier and stuff. I think that would be difficult, but I could take your theory.
But that's not your job, right? Can't you just hire someone on Fiverr or just go to, Upwork or something and just get someone to do that for you once you have a proper server where you're hosting your domain?
Yeah, once we have a budget, I can do that. I'm saying for now, I'd rather just keep it all.
But you're so skilled at raising money. You're Lauren, like, hello, like, just go raise the money. Like,
well, that's what I'm doing. But I'm putting something out there before we're really ready and just kind of jumping in. And this is to have something to show to raise money. So that's what I'm trying to do. But I'd rather keep it just like not have it be too complex and something I can't manage because it's really about conversation and taking those conversations and figuring out what is like the actual like human algorithm before we automate it. But what
Good
you
luck with
said,
that. It's too, yeah. I'm just saying, we've been trying to do that for 2 years. That human algorithm thing, I don't see anyone solving that problem. Nobody solved that. Not even China has solved that problem. And they have WeChat and Tencent and trillions and trillions of dollars being thrown at that problem. The human algorithm, until they create their own blockchain or their own system, I mean, if you don't have a nation with laws already set up that you can control the people, you're not going to create a human algorithm. There's no such thing as a human algorithm. It just doesn't exist in humanity. It's never.
no, there is a human algorithm. It's like what we actually do when we relate to each other. I'm not,
It's
simple. It's not.
I'm just saying, if I go into someone's house in Asia and I don't cover my feet, if I point the bottom of my feet at someone, there's going to be problems.
Yeah, that's the human algorithm.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's so complex because there's so many types of humans on this planet and so many languages. In Africa, God, I mean, your husband's African. How many languages do they speak on that continent? Jesus Christ. I've been talking to people in Africa and they're like, what language do I speak? What village? Like, what do we, like, there's 200 languages within 10 miles. I'm like, what? It's crazy. So,
I mean, what you're saying
anyway,
is right, that one significant thing I got out of your conversation as well is if you can communicate with someone with the tools that they like to use, it goes a lot quicker than having them adopt things. But I'm not sure, because everyone, it's like 100 things people are using. So how on earth do you create more flow?
there's only 3.
What?
Actually, there's 4. There's only 4 operating systems being used with 98 to 99% of the people on this planet. It's Linux, OS, Apple OS, Microsoft Windows, and Google's Cloud. Chrome.
Yeah, but then there are all sorts of software and Facebook and Twitter and
but they all integrate with those 4. They all work. I mean, we solved all these problems back in the 90s by creating what's called a browser. The browser communicates across platforms of any operating system of any device. And the most popular browser right now, which the most popular search engine is Chrome. Like, what are you using right now, Safari or Chrome?
Firefox.
Okay. Is Firefox working great for you?
Yeah.
So try to use all that stuff. In other words, whatever browser you're using, that is the interface between all the operating systems and all the cloud and everything. It's the browser itself. And that's why Chrome is so powerful, is they've written software on top of the browser. The open source part of Firefox drives me crazy because they were always updating it, and it works great for a while, but then when an update comes in, everything breaks. And that'll be the same thing with Zapier. If you don't have a solid connection from one database to another, the triggers will start to break if you don't have a solid foundation of it's like boats in the ocean and you've got ropes to each other. If those boats aren't stable, if they start to move, they'll break the connection.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
yeah,
Thank
but
you for the advice.
yeah, no problem. And my advice is don't try to do this stuff. Just say, I want a group that I would just write down step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then get a group of 20 people to try to go through those 7 steps and find out where it didn't work and then do it again. Like Sam said, that's boom, that's 1 sprint. Okay, so what didn't work there? Now let's change those steps. I forgot to tell people that they can't use Gmail for Microsoft. They can't use Microsoft for Gmail. So let's change that and then run it again. And eventually it'll just work. And the way you make all the software work online is you pick one base, which is, you know how when you go on to any software ever, it says login with Facebook, Twitter, or Gmail?
Mm-hmm.
Start off with the ID of one of those. Like do everything with Twitter IDs, do everything with Facebook IDs, or do everything with Google ID or Microsoft ID. You just pick one of those as the base when they first give you their email address.
Uh-huh.
Make sure that that ID works, and then you can go across multiple software. Does that make sense?
No, I'm sorry. Can you be more specific? Like you need to make sure that someone's email, like they're doing that or you're doing that, I'm doing that? Who needs to do
You're
that?
the aggregator of the collaborators. So the collaborators are giving you their information to collaborate with them. And if they're not all giving you the same collaboration information, such as all their Gmail addresses, it just won't work. Because then if you have logins with Gmail and they're not using their Gmail, how are they going to log in? Pick an ID system is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, like Facebook or Gmail?
Here, I'm going to Lumio. It's Lumio.com.
Uh-huh.
And let's just see, when I go there to log in, what do they allow you to log in with? Let's press login. I'm going to their login. I can use Google or Facebook.
Okay.
So you told me earlier in the conversation that the problem is people don't go to Lumio and actually interface with it.
Uh-huh.
If you had collected in your email aggregator for everyone in the group, either a Google ID or a Facebook ID, then you can send them a message saying, click here and log in with your Google ID. Your account was created with the Google ID. If they create their account outside of Google, they won't be able to log in as easily. Making it easy for everyone to log into every piece of software is the key to collaboration, in my opinion.
Okay.
If you share a Google Doc with someone and they don't have Google Docs, how can they look at it? You have to turn it into a static piece of information like a PDF and then share it, and then it's not collaboratory. Same with OneNote. So if you want to be super successful, just tell everyone that wants to work with you they have to use Microsoft, and you'll be wickedly successful because Charles Blass loves OneNote. I kid you not. It's free and open source. And when people get mad at you, they're like, I hate Microsoft. I don't want to use it. Be like, did you know they're an open source company now? Did you know that they're doing everything open? Did you know that Windows is free? Did you know they're open source?
Do you mean that you, for example, like you make sure that everyone has a Google address?
No.
So we can all...
No, you make sure everyone use Google. They only use Microsoft.
What?
Stop using Google and just use Microsoft. Do every piece of software, everything you ever want created is all in OneNote. Every collaboration tool is all there.
Okay, could we just use Google Docs or?
Then just do Google. That's what I'm saying. You have to make that decision from the get-go, because that's where everything, we fought with PKE because Charles wanted to use OneNote and someone else wanted to use Google Docs. And then I wanted to use Apple, and then someone else wanted to use Facebook, and they're fighting each other.
Okay, so you have to choose one. That's your point.
Yeah.
Okay.
It works. It's literally so successful. The people that just choose one, they don't have these problems anymore. Those problems are in the background, and now they're working.
Okay. Okay. Cool. That's a very good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I use Basecamp, because Basecamp is one place that works with everything. It works with OneNote. It works with Gmail. It's one location that works with every single thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that I needed one email address to link to Basecamp, and people were giving me multiple email addresses to link to Basecamp. And then when they logged into Basecamp, which email, and that was the problem. So in the beginning, if I just picked 20 people, had 20 email addresses, cleaned out Basecamp, logged them all in with that one email address, everyone could easily just log in and it would all work. And Basecamp actually fixed that since we worked together last year. They put a new layer of encryption to fix all that. So
Okay. Interesting. Great. Thank you.
rock it on.
All
Be
right.
safe.
Bye. Thank
ciao.
you.
Cheers.
Mhm.
Besos.